Yo, what is good, everybody? Let me kill the music. Because it's loud. What is good, everybody? How we doing? Hopefully volume is good.
Hopefully we're good.
How
I
does
think I
Polly...
need to put this on a different screen.
Gotcha. Yeah, I had to go turn my phone back on to put it up on my phone. How does Polly sound in comparison to me? Say a couple things, Polly.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, of course you
drinking,
cropped the
by the way.
happy birthday hat in there.
Oh, that wasn't intentional. I haven't changed. You must have moved stuff. I haven't changed it since you
Oh,
gave me...
you're right. I did move this.
Yeah.
I did put this over here now.
I didn't crop that. I have not touched this scene other than swapping out the link that you send me in the beginning for your camera.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That was me then. I thought that was intentional on your behalf.
No, it's all good. Okay, good. Kitty Bit, welcome in also. We got Crowned in the building. We got Dark. We got Eno.
Got Anno. Yes.
Peach
I hope you all like the beautiful thumbnail art that was made by Meech.
Yeah, big shout out to Meech for that.
Yeah, it was pretty funny of like KJ trying to doing the rock math and me just daydreaming because I don't do mechanics.
Hey, I love me some rock math. I will say the rock math in later games is even more fun. It turns into almost like it starts to get on the line of like rock algebra. It's good. It's good stuff. It's like
a little bit, yeah.
Even more
where
math.
I'm just like, insert stone and make thing go boom. That's how I play game.
Makes sense.
But yeah, welcome in everybody for our second YouTube stream on this channel. I'm gonna say second on this because I know KJ's done YouTube streams before. I have not.
I've only done one though.
Oh, that's right. You still only have done the one on.
I guess technically I've done multiple, but they only one for like my planned content. The other one was like a thing for my draft league.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, super excited. Also, if you want me to crop the birthday hat out, I can.
No. I'm too close to the one side there. There we go. I think.
Okay.
I think we're fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and make sure you hit that like button while you're watching. It just helps with YouTube's algorithm things. It is very different than Twitch streaming, that's for sure.
Yes, yeah. Anybody, if you're not already, please hit the like button. That'll be super useful for bumping us up in the algorithm and all that good stuff. But I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about this. I know it's been a little while. I had to like pull out my notes. I have not looked at them in a while. So
you have beaten this game very quickly, and I have taken a while. So
it's all good. I think you're gonna beat Chained Echoes before me because I kind of have the itch to play Azure. I'm not gonna lie, I have the itch.
Oh, I thought you were gonna stream it. You're not gonna stream it?
I'm not sure yet. I'm loving Radiant Historia, and I kind of want to keep streaming from the DS. I'm not gonna lie. Streaming from the DS is
fair.
Dope
and
as hell.
that means you'd be taking technically a Trails break then if you didn't.
Yeah, but I think I feel like the break should come at Cold Steel, not at Azure. Like I don't know. That's fair. Yeah, so that's why I'm sort of trying to figure it out. I mean, you're cruising in Suikoden. I think you might end up beating it earlier than I thought you were going to. You're making good progress.
Oh,
yeah? Yeah, I mean, you're going like 8 hours a clip, so...
I mean, an hour and a half of that's not really streaming, though. That's like the game.
True, but like... I mean, realistically, it took me... I think 60 something hours to beat Suikoden 2. So realistically, if it takes you a little longer because of more like chatting and stuff, like I wasn't very distracted during play. Actually, there were some pretty crazy things that happened during my Suikoden 2 playthrough. But in general, I'm thinking, yeah, if it takes you like 70 hours, we'll say, that's only I mean, if you're doing 6 hours a stream,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
it's only a
But
couple
like,
weeks. You'll probably get through it by like end of September if you keep going at the pace you're going. So we'll see.
yeah, I'm trying to beat it before you visit, right? So like, I
Mhm.
want to get it done so that I could give you the game back, so I don't keep it longer than I need to. So
It'll
I'm
be
just like,
fine.
you know,
Worst
and there might be
case,
some extra streams in September anyway. So I was like,
worst case,
might
if
be.
you don't beat it by the time I get there, I'll show you how to pull the. I'll set it up so that you can pull saves off your memory card going forward.
Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right.
Do
But
you have an
yeah,
extra?
the
Do you have an extra PS2 memory card?
I have like 4 of them.
Yeah, I can. I'll give you the special software that I use on my PS2 memory card to then take saves off of the memory card onto a USB, and then you can convert them on your PC via other special software that then makes them playable via the third special software.
I like the special software.
Yeah, special software.
Also, Kitty Bit, yes, come bug us, come bug us. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm on a Suikoden 2 journey, and KJ's doing Radiant Historia right now. So I actually beat this game that we're reviewing right now. Was it not last week?
I think it was
last week?
last Monday. I think.
Yeah, last Monday. So I got kind of the end boss. We're going to talk about that later. Kind of wrecked us both in the exact same way. So
That
I
is
was
so.
very
That final
angry.
boss is so freaking frustrating.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it a little later.
But we'll talk about it later. Yeah. But like, so I ended up beating it or whatever. And I was just like, Trails 3? And I like immediately wanted to play the next one, but I was like, but I had already like committed to starting Suikoden. So I was like, I don't think I can do this thing. So I'm like, but now I'm being convinced to maybe stream 3. So I might stream 3, play 0 off stream if it gets fun.
Definitely play
and then
Zero off stream.
stream
That was a snooze
Azure.
fest. The
Yeah.
opening of it was definitely a snooze fest. I think you'll be equally as bored as you were playing some
That's
of
what
the
I'm
other,
worried about because
playing some of the other games that you've played that you were bored about. I won't name any names to like upset people, but I know there were some other games that you played where the openings were a little boring. So
Yeah, and see, I was like super worried about that, and hearing your opinions throughout the whole like travel of Zero and how much you like had to almost drag yourself to beat
not
it.
almost.
Okay, had to drag yourself to actually beat it. I was just kind of like, that's worrisome for me for like a stream game because again, like I don't want people to be like super like tired and bored. So
I think it's more so you'll be bored. I think other people, the fan base is so. It's a diehard fan base, right? Like even anybody that's watching this, probably like super diehard fans, especially of the Sky series. Like I feel like because the Sky series isn't as sort of available, a lot less people have played it. So I think that is definitely the case where I think other people will be so hyped that you're playing it, but I worry that you'll be bored if you try to stream Zero because it is.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I did a lot of I did most of the side quests, and like, I was kind of drudging through it and kind of frustrated with it until probably like 32 hours in, I think.
Yeah, and see that kind of worries me about it, like especially about a stream game, because like I don't want to like I try really hard to pick games that I'm like, obviously with first playthroughs I don't know how it's gonna go. I might end up dropping it, but I try to stick with it and I try to push through it even if a thing. And I haven't had a game yet that I've streamed where I had to really. The only slight exception was The World Ends With You, but that wasn't because of the story or the characters or anything. That was because the gameplay for the Switch was really bad. And because I couldn't play in tablet mode because I was streaming it, it really hurt my wrists and killed my arms really bad. So I had to like keep cutting the stream short because I just couldn't physically handle the constant motion of them. But other than that, I've never had a situation where I'm like, you know what, I'm not gonna entirely finish this on stream. I do get sidetracked with other things, but like I never had like that. So I'm just a little bit worried.
I've had a
Zero
few
might
close
be that.
calls.
What's that?
I said I've had a few close calls.
You did have a few close calls for a few games, but
Yeah.
and like I also want, like, I want to take it in stages, because I'm never the type of person who wants to play all the games of a singular series. Like, even like Final Fantasy, I know they're different games, but I'm like, I don't want to play like 10 Final Fantasy games in a row. That's
Oh, in
not.
a row. Okay. I thought you meant
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't want to finish a series at all.
Oh, no. I'm cool finishing a series. It's just sometimes I just don't want to do it all continuously. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I think it'd be really cool if I did Sky 3, and I might stream Sky 3, just so that I can actually like play it through, because with the podcast game off stream, I don't have a whole lot of time, being that I'm like working a lot and
Mm-hmm.
planning a wedding and a lot of other things. So like, I think with 3, I think it'd be fun to stream that, because I think a lot of people would really love to watch my opinions through it. And then like, that's like, okay, I finished the Sky. So like, I could do them on like sections, right? So I could
Yeah.
finish the Sky section, and then do maybe Zero off stream, stream Azure on stream, take a break again, and then like see what I'm gonna do about Cold Steel, because I know Cold Steel 1 and 2 didn't age very well, and like, even like Dark in chat right now is like, I'm gonna watch Cold Steel 1 and
It's
2,
like
because it's like, I
33
don't want to
hours
play it.
of movie, and he's gonna watch it all. It's wild.
Yeah, so I was like, holy crap, okay. Um okay, so like, I don't know what I'm gonna do when I get to the Cold Steel games yet. Because I do have Cold Steel 1 and 3, or 3 because of you, and then 1, P-Stone got me 1. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I don't know quite how I'm gonna do that, but
Hey, you're missing 2 and 4, and then you're good. There you go.
yeah, Coffee Cat is a different breed of streamer. Like, when she gets hooked in a series, she like does the series.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only one might be the exception, just so that I get through them all, because I probably will not finish the series if I do this, is probably Kingdom Hearts. Would be the only one where I just go all the way through and get them all the games done, do all the games, and like, kind of a marathon thing to
Ugh.
actually get the complete story. But I don't know if I like broke it up, if I would be motivated to actually go and actually finish it. I don't know. I think I've had the same problem as I did before, where I played a few different off Kingdom Hearts games, and then I was just, yeah, I was like, these are on too many different platforms. I don't want to try to do this.
Want to be like Cat? Yeah, Cat be powering through those games. I don't know how. Also, the Kingdom Hearts marathon. Everybody does. It feels like no, everybody that hasn't played Kingdom Hearts does it, or hasn't finished all of the Kingdom Hearts games does it. Whew, it's a long one.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I'd probably do it in between my con season. So doing it over the winter months, more or less. Because
Okay.
I feel like, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, did KJ, Meech, Dark. I could also see like Cat trying to be there a little bit more
P
frequently
Stone will be
too.
there too.
P-Stone, yeah. So it'd
Yeah,
be,
your mod
I think
team.
I'll be well protected. It's just a matter of like, it's a lot, but I don't know if I'll get through the series if I don't do it that way. Because I keep not being motivated otherwise. I don't know.
Fingers crossed. You just want to keep playing other games.
Yeah, so far I have a really long list of like okay, so we were talking about this on stream today, and I'll bring it here since we're on the YouTube channel now, so you guys might not have caught the stream today. But I was telling KJ that I was like talking to him about like Lost Odyssey and everything, and I was like, okay, like, I want to beat Suikoden, and then when I beat Suikoden might be around the same time as Star Ocean 2 remake launches, and I want to kind of drop everything to play that, because I'm going to do like a whole cosplay thing and all that sort of stuff for it. And the community was incredibly amazing to get me the collector's edition of the game, so I really want to like put my heart and soul into that. So I was like, okay. And then he's like, oh, well, and then I'm like, okay, well, I think I'll do Lost Odyssey after that. But I'm also thinking of streaming Trails of the Sky 3. And then he also brought up that I haven't beaten Pokemon yet. And I was like, okay, maybe Pokemon will be Saturdays. So I'm like looking at my, like, even just my list of games. And I was like, and there's also Final Fantasy Tactics has to be put in there somewhere, because I really want to play War of the Lions. because I love Tactics
That's a
Ogre Reborn
long.
so much, and it's the same team.
That's probably gonna take you as long as whatchamacallit did. Tactics Ogre.
Yeah, and so like, and I'm gonna be. It's again. I think it's gonna be a scenario like I am with Suikoden 2 right now, where I just keep having long streams because I just really into the game. And so I'm just like, okay. So I'm looking at my list of things, and then I was even thinking about in November to do like a spooky November playing Parasite Eve. So I'm just like, there's just so many things I want to do. So I don't know when the Kingdom Hearts thing will happen, but it'll happen at some point, maybe next year.
Maybe plan it out so that you can plan it out around Kingdom Hearts 4. That's the real play.
Honestly, it would be really cool if I did the marathon and led into 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I might do something where I wait, because part of my fear too, and I think every streamer like kind of like worries about this, and like I think this is just a thing when you're a variety game streamer, is sometimes when you stream that one game or that one series or whatever, you get a flock of the big fans and hardcore fans in, and then they all just leave after. So that is also part of my fear with the Kingdom Hearts series, and every like streamer goes through this with any of the games that they stream. It this might actually happen depending on the sig, but I find with RPG games, there's like a few core games that people are like super wanting to watch and hardcore fans of. A lot of the Final Fantasy games, Kingdom Hearts series, and like the Xenoblade Chronicle series, and like they have the super fans like come out for them. And then the second you go to another RPG game or something like that, it's like they're gone, right? Because they're into that series and that series only. They want to see it. You've already done your first playthrough experience. Okay, we'll move on to the next first playthrough experience.
Exactly.
Which is totally understandable, but it's also like a fear of mine deep down, because I'm like, I would really like to kind of like build up like that core community that everybody wants, that I've already started, that KJ's already started. Like we have these great, amazing communities, and it's just kind of like I mean, they're trickling and they're expanding and like slowly growing and stuff like that, which is great. But like to like have that big mass and then just for all that to disappear, I don't know how right now my mental health would take that. So I'm like also in the back of my mind being like, we maybe put Kingdom Hearts a little further away until like mentally a thing. But I don't know. It's hard to say when to play something. It's hard to say what games are the games to play or whatever. But like, I'm just going with what I'm currently like vibing and most excited for. And like Trails in the Sky, I definitely picked up more momentum with this game than the first one. I was also playing it at a better pace, where I wasn't just playing it for 1 hour a night, which is, don't do the Trails games like that. Don't do that to yourself. That was the commitment I could give it. But Trails in the Sky second chapter, I was able to do it more, so I was really, really into it. And it was the same with my Suikoden game. I like beat it, and then I just was like, aw, I wanted to keep playing. I wanted to keep playing more. And so I had to deal with KJ, where I would play the second one right after. And yeah,
you still get to get the remasters too, because I did send you the money for the remasters.
You did, because
you'll still have the game too. It's great. It's a win-win. This was a win-win for you.
It was a win-win for me, but like, and also like, I just couldn't wait for the remasters though. Yeah. The problem is I like Suikoden 1 too much that I was like, I cannot wait until Konami gets their stuff together and announces when they're going to be released. I just want to play this now. So yeah, so I definitely threw that in there. But like, oh man, when I get into it, like I get into it. So like Suikoden's like that, Trails in the Sky is like that, and that's kind of why I want to play 3 sooner rather than later. So yeah, I think if I do the Kingdom Hearts thing, I think maybe the smart idea is to see when Kingdom Hearts 4 roughly is going to come out.
Which there's not even a release date yet.
Which it's not a release date, so it's like, but I think maybe it'll be like a next year poly problem if I do it and I don't want to wait anymore.
You still got plenty of games to play, don't worry.
Oh, I mean,
you'll never run out.
Half of these behind me are not played yet, so
I'll make sure to keep playing games you haven't played and then keep adding them to your backlog.
I mean, you keep doing that with what? Wild Arms 2?
Wild Arms 2 is so good. That is such a
Yeah.
good game. Okay, should we like officially start the podcast?
Yeah, we kind of rambled a little bit.
A
Sorry.
little
This
bit.
is
I
this is
think
the
one
tangent.
thing before we jump in, I think we'll probably be pretty light on like the conversation about the game. Like this might be a shorter episode only because the game mechanics didn't really change much. So I don't
Yeah.
know if we're going to necessarily be highlighting those. And we can kind of go over that again, but I think for the
Yeah,
most
there's a
part,
few like minor changes that
Yeah.
that have occurred. We can like kind of talk about a little bit, but a lot of this one will probably be talking about the plot line of
Yeah.
things and like the each chapter, because the chapters are longer in this one than the first one. So there is one prologue, there's a prologue, and then there's 9 chapters. So like 8 chapters in a finale, more or less, and which is longer than the first game. So there's a lot of story and there's a lot of character development and stuff like that. And I think we're gonna focus mostly on that, just because we've already talked about the mechanics. If you want to watch our Trails in the Sky first chapter, it's here right on YouTube. You can look in the live and you'll see the first chapters there. We talk about the mechanics and how I finally figured out rock math because I read the manual. And then we talked about like the art style and OST and voice acting. A lot of that doesn't really change
Yeah.
um, in this one because they're a continuation. And like Golden Sun, I think this would have all been one game had they had the technology, like the PSP could hold that. Because I think this one even ended up being 2 discs for a PSP
Yep.
game. So like it's already like pushing the brink of its capability. I think AJ's gotten to get it and is like, okay, yeah, this
Yeah.
was meant to be. Yeah, there we go. See, so it's actually 2 discs for the second chapter. So like it would have been a 3-disc PSP game if it released as
Which is
one.
wild to think about.
Yeah, which I feel like there's more of a break between 2 or 3. At least the way 2 ends, which we'll talk about later, there's a little bit of like, this one really flows from the last game. It really flows into, that leaves off of a cliffhanger. So kind of like Golden Sun, it feels like it was supposed to be like one game. But like it might have been like a 3-disc PSP game if they would have tried to cram it all together. So I'm kind of glad they did separate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's
yeah,
click
we're
the
gonna
button
yeah.
Okay, I clicked the button, so here we go. All right, so welcome everybody to the next episode of Turnbased Tangents. I am KJ.
I am Polly.
And we're gonna be talking about Trails in the Sky second chapter today. So if you looked at it, listened to the previous episode, you did get to hear our thoughts on Trails in the Sky FC. This is a direct continuation of first chapter, so we probably won't dive in too much into like gameplay mechanics and stuff like that. Maybe like small touch-ups, just because there wasn't much of a change. But yeah, we did want to just bring that up, and we're gonna dive in. So
yeah. So welcome in everybody. So if you caught our last episode, it was actually, we did it live on YouTube. Or if you're listening on Spotify or Amazon or wherever you're listening to, we do have an episode of the first chapter that we've already got it up. But if KJ wants to show off your physical, I don't have physical copies.
I have that. Yeah. So we do have the physical copy. Here it is.
Yeah, so he
2
has
discs.
a physical copy of the, I believe the Japanese versions. But
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I don't think this was released in the U.S. physically. It might have been released on the Vita, I think, but I'm not sure if that was like a legit thing that I saw or not. I don't think it was, but I could be wrong. I'm more than happy to be proved incorrect.
Yeah, and the only thing I have is actually at Otakuthon that I went to was that the weekend before that. I got this really awesome print. I should actually find out who the artist is because like it would be nice to like tag them. But I got this really awesome print that literally like showcased second chapter. Like it's literally referencing second chapter, which I think is kind of fantastic. But
I think they
so
made a
that's
really
all I got
interesting
to show.
decision with the characters they put on there. I think they did it for a reason. But I think they made an
Yeah,
interesting decision.
yeah, I think they did too, and I'll kind of like talk about that when we get to more the
Mm-hmm.
finale chapter of what we're talking about for second chapter because I think they did it deliberately too, and I think it was like a plot reason sort of
Yeah,
scenario.
it was definitely plot reasons. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a really beautiful print. Shout outs to that artist. I'll have to get their credentials and everything, but like literally the only trails artist at Otaku. So very happy I have that. So that's like my only physical thing because I played on Steam. KJ did too, but he also got the physical copies of the Japanese version so that
Mm-hmm.
you could have like physical copies of it. So a little bit jealous about that, but yeah. And one thing to highlight from that case that KJ showed is that this is really rare, but it was a 2-disc PSP game. So this game is long. Like it has a lot of it has a lot in it. So it's I can't think of another 2-disc PSP game for the PSP. I don't think I
I
even own
can't think
one.
of one either.
All my RPG games and stuff like that are 1 disc. So pretty rare to ever have 2 discs. And now it makes sense why they split this game up between first chapter and second chapter because they really just didn't have the room to do that all in one go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say so. It was really interesting because it did pick up pretty close to where it left off. I think there was a little bit of a no, there wasn't any really time skip. I guess there was a
No.
time skip based on between the start of the adventure. Like we still got the story, but then like the game starts off and there was some time that had passed because Estelle is with her name.
It was like a few weeks, yeah, or
I think
something
yeah,
like
they were
that.
like training for a few weeks. Like the game picks up the next morning, I think it is. But then they were like training for a few weeks and
Yeah.
kind of getting ready, and it was really interesting because it starts you off in a place where you're like unsure of what exactly is happening.
Yeah.
It ends up really just being like a big training session, which is pretty cool. Because you start to get a little bit more exposure to like some of the more experienced bracers and stuff like that, and I thought that was really cool. I thought the inclusion of the other bracers was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's because we got like very briefly touched upon them in first chapter, but you didn't really get to like there wasn't super interaction, so you start
Mhm.
off in the prologue getting to interact with them. So you
Exactly.
get more character development on them, so you care a little bit more about them.
Hmm.
Which I think is really cool. And yeah, so it flash forwards it's like, oh, it's the next morning, but then it does skip a little bit within its own prologue, and that's like the few weeks or whatever because Estelle ends up going to this like training camp kind of scenario with other bracers, and so the time skips that she's been training there for a few weeks and stuff like that. So like
Hmm.
I think they did that really well because they kind of showed you that the little bit of the end of first chapter connects almost pretty well seamlessly to the very start of the little bit of second chapter, which I think it was a perfect spot to separate them because it
Hmm.
definitely does feel like it was meant to be one whole big game,
Yeah, no,
especially
I
way
totally
the
agree.
mechanics go through it, like how they're
Yeah.
the same, but then they add like a few little extra things as you go throughout this one, and you're like,
So
oh,
yeah, I
okay.
think the biggest thing that they added mechanics wise was they just expanded everything, right? So they expanded sort of the different quartz that you can get and sort of the level of magic that you can have. So like rather than I think it was either I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 in SC, but you could have like level 4. I think it was level 3, right? You could have like HP
Yes.
up to HP level 3. Now you can
Yes.
basically have up to level 5. But you don't actually unlock level 5 basically until the last chapter. So
Yeah, exactly.
I think that they did a pretty good job of basically saying, okay, we're going to give you a bit more, but it's also going to be later game, and you're kind of going to go from there. But I think the fact that they sort of, for the lack of better words, I'm going to call it like their quartz grid. For the lack of better words, they basically updated all of their quartz grids to allow you to basically be able to do more, right? Like they added like the level system and stuff like that. Like I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and they explain it well in the game how they could do that, and it was actually very believable too. So they explain that they've they've done a lot of research more into it, and that the ones you were using before were like an inferior product, so they give you a new one that they've made and enhanced. And it's like, you know what, this logically would actually happen.
Yeah.
So while they do take away like all your equipment, all your items, everything that you got from the first game, even if you load in your file of the first game, there's a few things that transfer over, but not a whole lot. While they do kind of reset you a little bit that way, they keep your level higher up. But they also have this mechanic of being like, oh, yeah, we've already figured out new technology for this, and like as everybody knows, you buy your phone and like 6 months later there's another phone coming out. So like it's kind of very realistic in that sense that like it connected the reason why you could upgrade your slots and stuff like that now, and why you could get like fancier quartz, because they're learning and they're expanding. So I thought that was a really cool way to introduce extra like bonuses to the mechanics without making it like boring, right? So you
Yeah,
had a
making
bit
it
of an
story
upgrade.
relevant is awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna have I think that is the right way to do a continuation. Like if you're going to have a part 2 to your game and it's gonna be a direct sequel, make the different things that are happening like better, but give some kind of, make it story relevant, which they did.
Exactly. And that's what they did, and it flowed really well that way. Like again, they didn't really change a whole lot of the battle system because it worked. It was very well done in the first one. Like it was like the way they did it, they knew they didn't need to improve that necessarily. But giving like little tiny bits of like advancement, even with your quartz, of like having better spells and stuff like that later on too, allowed for you to like customize a little bit more and actually spend your quartz a little bit more. And like, kind of like as you're going on through this, you're slowly upgrading things and stuff like that, like you were in the first game. So it still gave you that mechanical aspect of like improving things, but like without it being like super like changing everything and everything how it worked. Which was really really nice. So yeah, so your prologue basically starts, so like the way first chapter ends with the whole like Joshua take it off kind of thing, it's really like Estelle is just such a strong person that she like takes like a few days to kind of like, oh, not even a few days, I think it was like a few hours to realize and go, oh, and then go, I'm going after him. like the mentality, like I'm gonna keep going with the whole bracer thing. I'm gonna improve. I'm gonna run into it. I know I'm gonna find him. She has this like kind of goal, and you know what? That's really admirable to me. Is that like she had a little bit of like, this is really sad. This is really heartbreaking, but I'm gonna pick myself up and go. Except for that, this really upset me. Like every chapter in this game until like chapter 6, it's just like they constantly remind you that he's gone, and then she gets really sad, and I'm like, stop, game. Stop bringing this up every freaking time you get. And it's just like these like emotional times or whatever. But it's kind of believable in the sense of like she keeps running into people and meeting people she's already met before, and like she's running into people as she's going through again and seeing familiar faces. Of course, they're all going to be like, "Where's Joshua?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they were always together. So it's not like her dad, who's already kind of like always gone. So like people are like, okay, we know you're gonna exist without your dad. That's just kind of how this works. But with Joshua, he was always there. So
Mm-hmm.
it while it was super believable, it was just like, can you stop like stabbing my poor girl's heart like every freaking
It's
like 10 minutes in
it's
this
tough for
game?
me, right? Because I think I don't necessarily agree with all of her actions. I don't. And that's really the hard part for me is like, and I mentioned this, excuse me. I mentioned this a bit in the last podcast, but like I think there was some level of like awareness to realize, hey, he needs some kind of space to kind of recoup all of it himself before he can then kind of share and be in a group dynamic where it helps him. Like he needed to work on himself a little bit first, at least in some
And
capacity.
she did too. She needed
Yeah.
to
Oh
like
yeah.
exist without him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was such a I was really mad at the end of first chapter, and like Estelle, I was like, I'm gonna grab him by his new fancy scarf and drag him back. Like I was the same mentality as she was.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I started progressing through this, it started with the prologue and like thing, I realized how much growth Estelle is getting on her own. She's now on her own, having to do her own thing. And while she still has like the support of the bracers, it's not quite the same. It's like going from having somebody who always watched your back and you were kind of dynamic duo to not having that person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to function and do things and move forward on your own without that constant person, I think is a really interesting plot mechanic. And I think it really had her grow more as a person throughout this chapter than always kind of leaning on Joshua whenever she kind of got into a pickle at the last chapter.
Which
So
it's
I
really
found,
interesting just because like so the way I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little foggy on the specifics of each chapter up until probably like chapter 3, I think it is. So 1 and
yeah,
2 kind of
okay.
blend in for me. But
They do kind of blend in, so it's not on you.
I know the early chapter, like in chapter 1, you have the decision of choosing Agate or choosing Shara, right? And I
Yes, yes.
think I don't want to say canon, but it's the only word that's coming to mind. The sort of canon decision for that necessary growth feels like it should be Agate because he's not going to baby her in the way that Shara would. And so like it almost feels as though again, like Polly said, she needs that growth. And so having Agate be sort of like the 1B to her 1A ends up kind of making it so that she gets that growth because even though they're on the same side and everything, like Agate is definitely much less like he's not gonna baby her and he's
No,
gonna make her
he's gonna
earn her
expect her to
stripes.
hold her own. That's kind of how
Exactly.
he is,
Yep.
right? And like I like that because I think we both picked Agate.
Mm-hmm.
But part of my brain in choosing Agate is not only just because I love Agate with his big sword. I was like, I think he's a really cool character. He was one of my favorite characters in the first chapter. But is that Shara, I think canonically they wanted you to pick Shara. It was almost like they were pushing Shara a little bit more at you, especially because there's more development between Estelle and Shara in this game. But my problem was exactly that, is that I just went from like my character depending a lot on Joshua to losing Joshua, and now I'm like, no, she's got to stand on her own. She got to stand on
Mm-hmm.
her own, and Shara's just kind of gonna coddle her a little bit more and protect her a little bit more, and not let her kind of come out of her shell a little bit more. It definitely felt like the game wanted me to pick her, but I was like, no, I'm gonna pick Agate because I think his standoffish nature would work really well with Estelle because she has to problem solve a little bit more herself, and then she also has to kind of like, okay, I got to hold my own, like I can't rely anymore. And I think I liked that angle more.
Mm-hmm.
um
And Dark
and
made a good point
like,
in the chat. There's also a lot of gender set here.
yeah, they did that in this one, which I thought was a little bit strange. So like,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the first chapter and second chapter, they have a lot of gender equipment. where it's like based on gender whether you can wear it or not. And I think it was really also important to have picked agate as well, because there was a lot of like male equipment you got in female, and if you had two females, like your character would not have been able to wear
Mm-hmm.
that armor piece for quite a long time before they start opening up where you got more characters and stuff like that, because it's like that dynamic duo for the first few chapters, and
Yeah, I
then
think
you're
up
kind of
until
getting
chapter
a
3,
third or
right?
fourth. You're getting like a third or fourth thrown in there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always like the dynamic kind of duo that you picked, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like the Joshua and Estelle sort of scenario where they were always together, and then you would pick your other two characters more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked out to our advantage, mine and KJ's, because we had agate instead of Shara. So a lot of the men only equipment, I mean, we could put it on him. The female only equipment we could put on Estelle. And it balanced it out a little bit better that way, because yeah, that is a mechanic I wanted to touch base with this one that I saw more in this chapter than the last chapter, and that was gender specific equipment happens a
Mm-hmm.
lot more in this game. I don't even remember if I got anything in the last game that was
I
gender
don't
specific.
I don't think there was anything in SC or in FC that was gender specific.
Yeah, so it's something that they changed in this one. I think one, because they were, I don't know if they were just trying to get you to use different characters more, or two, they were just trying to make it more restricted on what the characters could equip. But I definitely noticed it, at least in second chapter.
Yeah,
If it wasn't
same.
first chapter, I hardly noticed it because of the way it worked, because you always had Estelle and Joshua. It was already gender split, right?
Yep.
So then with this game, I think I would have really struggled in the first couple chapters in terms of like equipment and putting that on. Not that I think I would have struggled with the game, but I struggled with using the equipment and stuff if I would have had Shara as opposed to Estelle, because you find a lot of this gender specific equipment really early on in second chapter. So I think that was also like a gameplay choice that could be end up the deciding factor of who you pick. Not only
Mm-hmm.
that I thought it was better plot development for Estelle to kind of be on her own, but also just because of the gender specific stuff, right? That it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is pushing this a little bit more to be broad.
Also,
But
Cher is a kind of an uncomfortable character, so like not having Cher in
yeah,
the
I
game is
mean,
also.
to be perfectly fair, I was not okay, so I'm just gonna admit it. I was not a fan of Olivier last chapter, and I was not a fan of Shara because she was kind of like Olivier but drinks more and whips and that.
She's
But
fitting a
in
trope
this,
in this game. In the first
yeah,
game.
she has a trope, and I get it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But like, that's not generally my cup of tea of a character. So, but in this chapter, she definitely had more growth,
Oh, she has
and
massive growth.
she has massive
Like
growth in
massive
this one
character
that
growth.
she
Yeah.
kind of pulled up a little bit more for me in terms of
Mm-hmm.
my like feelings towards her. The irony of everything, Olivier didn't move.
Well, it's because so
There's
it's really
so many characters have massive character growth, and then there's him.
it's the way that they structured the game though, right? So
Yeah.
the way that they structured the game, like each chapter in the beginning. So what you find out at the end of Sky FC is about like Ouroboros and all of these different things, and it's like, okay, so you know that at one point Joshua was a part of this, and you know that the uh professor is sort of pulling strings, right? And or at least in some regard he's pulling strings.
Mhm.
But you don't really know anything else. And this game kind of introduces you to different members of the organization, but does it in a way that like the members that they introduce just so happen to have ties to some of your party members. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you get this at first, and the first one that you get is incredibly frustrating. I hate this character with a passion. But the like basically Persona 5 ripped this game off of this character, and like honestly I guess Persona 5 did it better because people like that character. This character is not good. Like he's
Oh
all
yeah,
he is
Persona
annoying.
5 did
He's
it way
annoying as hell.
better.
He's annoying as hell. Like the Phantom
Yeah,
Thief,
like
Blue
the
Blanc, or whatever his
first
name
one
is.
you get
Terrible.
out of this whole thing is the freaking Phantom thing. And I think it starts with the earthquakes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, not the
No.
earthquakes. It's
Oh,
the
what was it
Phantom
starts?
Image.
Oh, yes, sorry, the
It's the
Phantom
Phantom
Image.
Image.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, for the first, like, I don't know, a quarter of this game, you're kind of playing Solve the Mystery. So it's like a solve the mystery kind of thing, and you're going through the plot line. And the very first mystery that you kind of get is that people are seeing this phantom image of this like person in white kind of floating around the city, and they're like, what the heck's going on? So you're like, as bracers, are tasked to investigate it. And so Estelle is kind of like, okay, but I want to go find Joshua. But she's like, okay, but like I gotta figure this out first. So it's really admirable that she's like, she knows she wants to do this thing, but at the same time she realizes as a bracer her duty is to the people. And at first and foremost, there's this weird thing going on, she's got to investigate it. And so you start off investigating that. And yeah, the first like reveal of this game is that white phantom like drifting off or whatever duplicate stuff ends up being this phantom thief guy. What was his name? Blue Blanc?
Yep.
Blue Blanc?
He's the worst.
He's literally the worst. He's literally Olivier, but with a mask. Like, and I was like, really, Gabe? This is the first one that you throw in my face. This is the first, like, kind of like tying it. You know who the overall bad guy is, but these are kind of like the sub bad guys, right? So, like, this is the first one they throw at you in terms of like to kind of be setting that sort of stage up where with these like pseudo like the lower down on the totem pole kind of thing bad guys. And like, oh my goodness, his whole speech and the way he talks is so much like Olivier that Olivier looks at him and goes, "You're my rival now," because like he knows that he talks the same way.
It's pain.
They're like, yeah, it's pain. So this is how you start, and you're like, okay. So you start with that, but the mystery of what's going on and what they're doing intrigues you from the start, I find, because like he's testing out some sort of like power or whatever, and then like, you know, you kind of like mingle with that, and then he disappears again, and you're just like, okay, but what's their end game with this, right? You're thinking, like, why are they testing this power? And you're already curious, okay, what's going on the next one? And so for the first few chapters, they have these like mysteries that you're figuring out, and you're sort of getting the bits and pieces of everything. And I like that because it keeps you just enough. But of course, they had to bring the Olivier clone in as the first one, and I was like, you really
I think they did
have
it
gone
that
with like
way.
any of the other ones.
I think they did it that way intentionally because
he's the least of the like. He's the least tie into the plot line of things.
Well, I disagree.
Well, I mean, like, I find he's more okay. How do I explain it? It's more like he's in the plot line of the overall thing, yes, but his direct ties with certain characters and stuff like that
it's like more on the spot. He makes the ties with them on the spot, at least that we know of.
And what he's testing is like kind of like the lower end of what you're testing. Like he's testing being able to duplicate his image from a distance. So it's like in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't seem super bad guy-y. Like you're like, okay, but like what is that? So I think because he's the Phantom Thief, and it was like the Phantom projection thing, and it was like the easiest kind of like introduction into what they're doing. I think that's why they threw him first. And then I feel like each one after that, it starts having more of a connection to your party members, where that's more of like you got Olivier being like, hey, you're like me, we're rivals now. And you're like, okay, Olivier, shut up, I don't care. But like, even just the next one that you go against, the next one that you do, I think it's the Raging Land, and I think that has to do with the earthquakes.
That's the earthquakes.
Yeah, the earthquake one, I believe, is the next one that you deal with is Walter.
Yep. I will say the reason why I think they did the Phantom Thief one first is because they wanted to give you side quests where you're finding his random shit that he's doing.
Okay, that too.
Which,
You're right.
again,
He
that shit
does
drives
have
me
like
nuts.
fetch quests of that later on, where you're
It drives
like
me. It
running
makes my blood
around.
boil. I hate fetch quests, and like that was just all of his quests are just riddle. Are there literally riddle fetch quests? That's
They're
all they
riddle
are.
fetch quests with no point at the end.
This
That's
dude
the
is
worst
like,
of it.
he's just a really bad version of Olivier mixed with the Riddler. That's literally what he is.
Yeah, yes.
That's literally what he is. He's the Riddler and Olivier mixed together, and it's awful. I hate it. Like,
Yeah, and it's like his side quests, I kept doing them because I knew he was a central character, right?
Mhm.
He was going to be like a bad guy. I knew that. So I was like, maybe I would get more plot stuff. And honestly, I didn't feel like I got a whole lot out of that by the end. There's some bits and pieces where you got to learn a little bit of him, which I thought was very interesting because you don't find out if you don't do those.
Exactly.
So like you don't get the bits and pieces of his background unless you do his riddle fetch quests.
Yep.
So like you do get him, but because I didn't like him as a character anyway, I was so disinterested.
See, for me, it's tough because I am very much intrigued by the backstory of Ouroboros, like as a whole. So
yes.
I was like, okay, any member of this, I want to know more. So that was definitely something that was really interesting. And I think that can kind of springboard into some of the more interesting members that we've been introduced to. So like Polly said, Walter, who after we fight and almost get our asses whooped,
yeah, really.
we find out that he's like basically old training partners and like part of the same like school that Zin was a part of.
Yes.
Like part of the same teachings. And I thought that was pretty. I think the way that they sort of introduced all of that was really interesting because they also kind of played on the like love triangle aspect a little bit too, sort of. It was kind of hard to navigate exactly what they were trying to go
There's
on with
something
that.
going on with all of them. Yeah. Kalika was the other one who is one of the you meet her in the first game. She's one of like the guild masters in one of the towns.
Yeah. And her father was the leader of like the school of like the martial arts school that they basically all trained under. So
exactly.
That was really interesting to kind of see that and then go through and kind of see what they wanted to kind of do with that, and the conversations that were had between the three of them honestly is really interesting. So
yeah, and you get more like story on Zin because you don't know a whole lot. Even in the first game, you don't get a whole lot of character development on Zin. You know he's from a different country or whatever, and he comes in, he's kind of just there, and he's a bit of this like really positive kind of guy, and like you don't get a whole lot on him. But with this introduction of this Ouroboros member, Walter, you get teased. There's this whole thing. And you get told that him, Kalika, and Walter all trained under her father, and then something happened between Walter and her father, and he ends up dying or whatever, the father, and stuff like that. And then you kind of like you're kind of left with like, wait, why is nobody explaining this kind of thing? But it's because they're giving you a bit because they're going to tell you more as you go through the story, right? So they keep giving you bits and pieces of the Ouroboros members. They keep giving you bits and pieces of the what the heck's going on, and you find yourself cutting between like Joshua kind of running around and doing his own thing, and then you're cut between like the Ouroboros members. You're cut between like the head guy, the professor guy or whatever, Wiseman or whatever, and then like you're kind of being thrown, like you're given bits and pieces in so many directions on each chapter. And so I kind of liked that because it's like, even if you didn't have a particular interest on a character, there was enough going on that you could be like, okay, I mean, that character's there, but I'm really interested in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it kept your interest no matter who your favorite character was in your party, in the party from the first game. And you're also getting introduced to a new character that's kind of popping in and out from, like, I believe the prologue actually is when you
End
first
of
see them.
end of the prologue, I think.
I think the end of
It's
the
either
first
end of the
prologue,
prologue
you
or
see
start of the
them.
first chapter.
You start to get introduced to a new character that you weren't introduced to in the first chapter.
You're definitely talking about my boy.
Yeah, I'm talking about your boy. I'm talking
go.
about Kevin, who I affectionately nicknamed Chia Pet because he has
There's no
green...
affection there. There's nothing good about being a chia pet. Nothing. There is nothing good about being a chia pet, Polly. There's
like
nothing good about being a chia pet.
It was like very much a grass head. Like his hair looks like grass. But he's wearing
Polly's
like
gonna
these
be like,
kind
yo,
of...
Kevin goes to get a haircut and he's really mowing the lawn. That's a Polly. That's what Polly is saying. Polly just called him grass head. That's where we're at. The
So this is how I start, as I'm introduced to Grasshead. And I call him Chia Pet. And literally, I have a group chat with KJ, Pisto, Dark, Trails fans, and who've played these games before. And I literally called him a Chia Pet. And like, the hands were ready to be thrown in that first little bit. So it was kind of funny. But like, so he's got like these white kind of priesty robes, and he introduced himself as Father Kevin, as a priest kind of idea. And I was like, okay. And then he immediately hits on Estelle while, like, just before she starts crying.
That's his
And
one low point in the game.
And it's,
That's his one low
so
point.
luckily for anybody listening, that is the one part where I was just like, oh, don't tell me this is going to be Olivier 2.0. I was already like, but like afterwards, he adjusts and stuff like that. And I actually really think that his popping up here and there is really interesting because he always seems to like kind of just tap everybody a little bit in the right direction.
His
of
timing
like
is
motivated.
immaculate. His timing is so good.
His timing is great. But because his timing was so great, I suspected him all the way up until I think it was like chapter 7, where I kept thinking I was going to get blindsided like the professor in the first game. I kept thinking I was going to be like blindsided again. But the difference between the professor and Kevin, for me going through it, was Kevin was a lot more, how shall I put this? Invested in you succeeding, where the professor was just kind of like, I'm here, don't suspect me, and like wandered away. And you're just like, okay. So you often forgot about him anyway, because he was like, you know, whatever.
I
you don't
didn't.
care.
And that was the thing. I was like, when are they going to put him, when is he going to be a dedicated party member? Because that was one of my biggest things. I felt like, so he, I think, fights with you like officially in chapter 3 during all of the like tea party stuff. So that's kind of like after the Walter stuff, you go in and you find this girl, Ren, who seems like everything is like it's weird. She seems like she's like normal and then doesn't, and then it's a mess. And then you find out that she's a member of Ouroboros. Like they just kind of spring that on you, and she like you're really just in her game. And Kevin ends up joining you for that chapter. Also,
Yes.
Moroku is way worse than Kevin. Like way worse.
To be fair, yes, Moroku's like halfway between a Kevin and Olivier.
Moroku's
I feel like Moroku's still better than Olivier, but he's not.
If
Kevin is definitely better, but like
if our scale is 0 to Olivier, Moroku's like an 8 and Kevin's like a 4, maybe a 3.
Yeah, and like so So you have the Raging Land, which is like talking about earthquakes, and you're trying to solve this mystery of these earthquakes. You deal with Walter, you deal with the Sid stuff, and then the next chapter you get a little bit more of Kevin again. So like Kevin's kind of there at the prologue, and I think he might pop in one of the other chapters, but very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of really comes into play in the third chapter, which is called the Mad Tea Party. And you keep getting alluded that the tea party's being run by this guy in pink called Capabella? Camp
Campanella?
Capanella. Yeah. You keep thinking he's the one who's kind of like doing this tea party thing. You see Joshua's investigating it. You see the military's investigating it, like all these different things. And you're like, okay. And he's the one who keeps actually popping up. So you're like, okay, so I'm going to get more detail about him. So you're going through, and then you find this, like, you run into this tiny child who is on vacation with her parents or whatever, and then suddenly her parents are gone. It disappeared, and so like you're like, what the hell? This child's like 12, and so you're like trying to. So during this chapter, you're both trying to figure out what like this tea party thing is, but you're also trying to figure out where this child's parents are, and you're like investigating with and the guild, like the bracer guild is trying to figure things out, and but all the while she doesn't seem to care. She doesn't seem to care, and she keeps pulling pranks on you. And I will quote that I hated that chapter because she kept doing these stupid quests, like these stupid like tricks on you, and then you had to go find her. And I was like, I'm gonna smack this tiny child. Like I'm gonna say it. I hated running around for her. I hated like dealing with her as a character.
I'm
and like
gonna make you mad, I think, with my next statement. Ren is like one of my favorite characters in this series.
Oh, she grows on me. But this chapter ticked me off. This chapter ticked me off because she was more or less like trolling you.
Oh, yeah.
And like you knew she was, and you're like, oh, this child. Why? And all the while, you don't suspect until the end where she pops up as she's the Ouroboros member. And I was like, this makes sense why she didn't want me to progress, because
You're literally pawns in her game.
So I was so angry at this tiny child until finally that got revealed, and I was like, oh crap, okay. And she's like, pulls out this massive scythe, and you're like, okay. And she's like, I'm gonna gut you like a fish. And I was like, okay. Like, you just went from like tiny helpless child to going to like murder things. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that her like mother and father, like she like basically sliced them in front of you until you realize, Estelle realizes they're dolls. They're not even like real people. And like, that's when I was just like, okay, now I'm interested in this character, because like that whole beginning, I was like, I was taking care of this child. This child kept running away. I like kept having to do these like different like quest line things of like, and then trying to find this child again. And like, she would never stay put. And I was just frustrated and stuff like that. And then when it was revealed by the end of the chapter, I was like, because I kept thinking, was this going to be this Capanella kind of guy. He had like the yellowy hair and the pink outfit, but no, it ended up being her. And I was like, okay. And I liked her character design. I thought her character design was really cool. It's very contrasty to the rest of your party. She's got like kind of pinky purple hair, but then she has this black and white, like almost like Lolita dress kind of thing that she's wearing. And then she pulls out this giant scythe, and I was like, okay. And the way she shifts from like, she's just trying to have fun as a kid, but she's also like a mass murderer who's killed many, many people. You're just kind of like, okay. And then Estelle is like suddenly invested in like, I wanna help this kid. I wanna help this kid out of it, because she starts to see what Joshua must have went through when he was a kid in the Ouroboros. So like she starts to see that a little bit, and I think deep down she gets attached to Ren, because it's like she wants to save Ren because she never got an opportunity to save Joshua back then. So like I think part of it is like that contrast a little bit, but also part of it, she can sense that there's something deep down, that there's just something really messed up with her, and she wants to get to the core of that. So like you get revealed that, and you're just like, Okay. So it's like you start off with this phantom thief and you're like, okay, I don't care. And then you go to the next one, you're like, oh, Walter, he's got a connection to Sin. This is kind of interesting. And then you go to the Tea Party chapter and it's like, oh, this tiny child is a mass murderer. Okay. And so this is like you're about like you're 4 chapter or you're 3 chapters in plus the prologue, so 4 total, and you're like, okay. And then
Yeah.
the next one, the Miss Demons target, they introduce the next character who has ties to Shara.
Yeah, they were like in a basically like a circus together.
Yeah. They were
Like,
basically in the circus together.
yeah.
And
it's really interesting because there's basically just like a small falling out, it seemed like. And
it seemed so small and trivial until later on, where it's like, okay, this was small and trivial, but you just went from 0 to 180.
Yeah. And honestly, it's really interesting because you start to see, this is where I think that's really where you start to see Shara's growth, because it kind of, you kind of get some of her backstory and it puts her whole like, it puts a lot of what she's doing into perspective, right?
Yeah.
And it honestly, it puts, not that it's justified, but it puts like her alcoholism into perspective as well. Like she had a very tough past, right? And so
very tough past.
You start to see that, and you start to see, oh, like this is somebody who as a child really never had a support system or anything, and then sort of turned to that on top of becoming a bracer to kind of get more on the straight and narrow, and like turn her life around. So
yes.
that was something I was like, oh wow, this is, I would say out of all of the characters from FC, Shara probably had the most character growth that was like on the surface apparent.
Yeah, because you don't really know she's the senior bracer in the 1st chapter, and she doesn't really talk a whole lot about anything to do with her. She's more like trying to help you and like Joshua out, and she's just trying to kind of like guide you a little bit. And then she's kind of grabbing Olivier by the ear because she knows there's something up with him. And like, so she's kind of like, you don't get a whole lot about her. And then she's also like hitting on Joshua a lot, who's like a minor kid, at least like 16 or something. And then like she has like this move called Sadist Whip. So you're like looking at her going like, okay, you're a trope, and I have no real depth of you yet. I know you. There's a little bit of a hint where she like trained under your father, and she knows your father really well, and he looked after her for a little bit, stuff like that. So like you get bits and pieces of that first chapter, but you don't get anything of like this magnitude. When you get to chapter 4, the Miss Demons target, you get you get her whole backstory, which suddenly all of these actions and the way she acts is put into perspective, because suddenly you know why she's kind of a little bit loosey with the drinking. You know why, like she was in a circus, she was in like, she had like this mentor scenario, and then she was kind of left high and dry pretty well, and that like the head of the circus like mysteriously disappeared, and like all those other things, like that's hard. And she's also like a young kid at the time too, and she had to like steal to survive, and like so she did a lot of bad things to kind of like be able to survive in that kind of world. And then suddenly this is all up, and then your dad Cassius and your mom at the time, because I think the mom was still around, for Estelle, her parents like kind of like took Shara in, like kind of led her on the path, taught her to how to be a bracer. She finally had meaning in her life, and she realized like that's what she's going to do. She's going to help other people and stuff like that, especially other people going through what she went through. So suddenly it all kind of put into perspective her as a character, and she definitely shot up for me as up there for a character. And like that she just always like had the best interest of Estelle. Like she always had Estelle's best interest at heart, because she kind of ended up being like a big sister to Estelle because of circumstances. So, and it also double made me glad that I didn't choose her as the one to tag around with Estelle in the beginning, because I felt like Estelle got more growth being less in Shara's shadow as well, right? So Yeah, it gave you a lot more depth of her, and you get to find her circus buddy again, and her circus buddy kind of just leaves off that like, oh yeah, the mentor didn't disappear, I killed them, and you're just like, excuse me, and then she disappears.
Yep.
And she's like, poof, gone. And you're like, you get all this plot development of Shara. She reveals it all. But then it's just like, okay, but I need more. Where's the, and then she disappears and like they're done testing their whole like miss thing. And she's gone or whatever. And you're just like, okay. What the frig? So you're introduced to these different Ouroboros members at this point. The only one you're not really like, you see him kind of popping in and out, Capabella, but you don't really, you don't get really like a super interaction with him. And then you're also getting, during this time, you're getting Love kind of popping in and out a little bit, who is more connected to who seems to have some sort of connection with Joshua. And so you're getting Joshua's bits and pieces over here, and you're getting all of this bits and pieces. So things are starting to kind of move where they're starting to feel like they're coming together a little bit more. Until we get to like, I feel like chapter 5.
This is the chapter I don't remember much of chapter 5. I'm sorry. I'm like trying to Google around to see if I can find what's happened in the, because like I don't remember the chapters by names. Like I remember just like pieces of them, and I remember chapter 6 and 7.
Yeah, because like, chapter 6 is the kind of the boring one for a while, right?
Okay.
So chapter 5 is where I think you're getting more like Joshua stuff. Like Joshua and the pirates.
Chapter that you actually get to use Joshua?
I think so, yeah. Where he's with the Sky Pirates.
The Sky Pirates? Okay.
I think. Yeah, so the funny thing is my head is now fuzzy on chapter 5 too. I'm looking at this list and I was like, okay, I remember all the way up to chapter 5, that which one must protect. I think is,
I know at the wait, oh, you know what happens there? That is when they find out about, so that's when Kevin comes back into the picture, and that's when they find Kurt, and they find out that like that's when the senior bracer team is going to the Ouroboros lair, and everybody but Kurt gets captured and they get him back, and Kevin wipes the like seal on his mind. And then that's the chapter I'm pretty sure that you go there, because
yes, okay, so there was like a lot happening in this chapter for like plot, right? Yes, okay, that's why, because there's just so much that happens that I was like, holy shit. Yeah, so you get like, you get her to Kurt. He's had like his mind like messed with, which is kind of what Wiseman had been saying that he had been doing to Joshua in the end of the first chapter.
He did it to a couple of people too. Like you could see, he did it to Kurt too. In the first
he did it to Kurt before too, in first chapter. So you know he does it again to Kurt. So like Kurt and the other team of bracers, the Kanya or whatever, Annalise, them, they all go like infiltrate where the Ouroboros is like making stuff. It's like the factory. And then he's the only one who comes back, and he's had his mind messed with again. So then all of a sudden Kevin shows up again, and he's got this device where he can like unlock his memories and give it back to him. And you're just like looking at Kevin at this point. Don't question him,
he's a man of the church.
And he's just like, oh, man, I'm just an underling. And you're just kind of looking at him, and you're just like, Kevin? So, but he's like, he's eagerly trying to help you. So like at that point, I stopped kind of like super sussing him, because I'm like, at this point, you just keep showing your hand that you're helping, not hindering. Which is like, okay, which was different than what first chapter was, especially with the professor and stuff. So I was like, okay, I think we're okay. So he helps Kurt. Kurt remembers and tells you where the factory is. And so you go and infiltrate the factory, and so Kevin ends up being a part of your party. He has to be a part of your party because he's the only one who can help their minds. So you have to pick 2 other people. I think I picked Agate and Chloe. I don't know
That
if
was my
Chloe's
party
allowed to
as
be
well.
picked at this one.
Mm-hmm.
I generally pick Agate and Chloe for everything. So like if Chloe wasn't allowed to be picked, it was probably Tita.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so you go through that, you're investigating that, and then shit happens. And this is chapter 5 ends up being like wild because you're finding all your bracer friends that have just been mind controlled. So you have to fight them, which is like, oh my god. And then you uncover their minds again and you're kind of revealing things. Um and then at the end you like get through everything and Ouroboros shows up again. And like you fight and then you end up being like everybody like ends up being put like with the whole mind thing put like out cold and they literally kidnap Estelle.
Mm-hmm. And that
So
leads into chapter 6.
and that leads into chapter 6. So you end chapter 5 with your main character being kidnapped. And you're just like, what? And then you're like running around as Kevin leading the party to like at the end of chapter 5, you're Kevin controlling Kevin and you're running to save Estelle. And then they like fly off. And then all I kept thinking was like, am I just going to be main characterless for like a chapter?
What's wrong with
But
Kevin?
no. You follow your main character to Ouroboros.
How would you have felt if they were just like, yo, Kevin's the main character from here on out?
I don't know how I would feel because I'd be like, my girl, come back. I think I would have been a little sad. Not gonna lie. But at that point, he was already starting to grow on me. So I liked his moves. I liked his S break move.
His S break is broken.
Yeah,
his S
everybody
break is
was invulnerable for a turn. That's like super broken.
And if it's max, it's 2 turns.
Which is just wild.
Yeah.
It means you can't get hurt for 2 turns.
Having 2 free turns is nuts.
It's like having control of Renoa's Invincible Moon with her dog. Yeah.
Pretty much.
And being able to do it pretty well whenever you want when you build up the gauge back. So it's like, it's wild. So he had such a broken S break that I'm just like, I'm just going to leave this on forever. I never turned it on. I never took, like, because he gets another one, and I think it's a damage dealing one, but I left him on the one where he just made you invulnerable. Like, yeah, I thought that was way more useful.
There's no reason not to.
Yeah, so then you start off like chapter 6 where Estelle is kidnapped by Ouroboros, and at first they're like very loosely trying to get to recruit her, but it's more or less that it's revealed that they're trying to like keep her out of the way, and you're just like, okay.
I think part of it is also them trying to leverage her to get Joshua back too.
Exactly. So they're trying to bait Joshua and they're trying to also get him back. And so Estelle, being Estelle, she tries to break out on her own and gets into a situation where she's probably going to be, toast. And one of the guards walks up and defends her, and it ends up being like he pulls off his helmet and it ends up being Joshua. And you're like, Joshua! So you're kind of like, okay, so you have to fight this fight or whatever, and you're kind of waiting for what the heck's going to go on between the two of them. And before that, so before you meet up with Joshua, Love comes into your room and just dumps a bunch of Joshua lore on your lap.
He does.
He dumps on it, so Love comes in and tells you his connection to Joshua, as well as Joshua's past entirely. So now Estelle is sitting with this information that she finally knows Joshua's past. And in her brain, it's like, it clicks with her of being like, he really did need to do this kind of on her own. You could see it in her, like you can like
it only
see
took
it in
6
the way
chapters.
she talks to him after. So you get this big thing, and Love just kind of like dumps this at you. Mm-hmm. Also, Love is my husband. I keep saying
that's I don't know if that's something you want.
From the beginning that I could fix him. Is fine. He's a great guy. He's a silver.
You cannot fix crazy. He's a fucking lunatic. Cool. You can't fix him.
He's so cool. Anyway, so he finally gives that like big lore, and I think, and then kind of leaves. And then Estelle's like, okay, I'm breaking out of this. I'm not going to join Ouroboros. I can't do it. Even though if it meant seeing Joshua again, she's like, I can't do this. What you're doing is wrong. And so she turns them down, tries to break out, and then Joshua comes and saves her. And they kind of have a bit of this moment or whatever, but then they're trying to like basically break out of this freaking place. Um, and yeah, so you get a lot of the story of who Love is, how he's connected and everything. And then Joshua, like after that sequence, Joshua like kind of rescues Estelle. You also get Joshua's side of things. So you get a side of things of like what he was told, how he went through it, his sort of side of it all, and how he felt. And I think deep down, like she realizes just how much he had to do that on his own. But then he was also talking about like they're standing on a beach together, and he's just like, but now I definitely have to go for good, and we need to say goodbye, and this is over, kind of thing. And Estelle's like, okay, no. You've had your time, you've processed it, you've realized, and it's very clear that we are stronger together, and we're doing the same thing. We're doing this together. And he's just like, but Misery. And she's like, no. You figured your stuff out. I figured my stuff out. Now we do this together. And she's like being very adamant that no, they are stronger together. They got to do this together. He still has a heart. It might have been broken. It might have been fractured. He's still him, kind of thing. And like, so he ends up having this like big breakdown and like crying and realizing, oh my God, you're right. You know, and I don't think he would have realized all of that if he hadn't had all that growth throughout the chapters. And with Estelle having the growth and like hearing his past and being like, you know what? I get it. Like she was so understanding. She heard him out, but then was very much like, no, like I'm here for you. We're gonna work this out. You're not a fracture of like you're still in there. There's still Joshua, like kind of thing, right? And pulls him out, and suddenly his eyes go from like blank expression to having the little white dots in them again. I don't know if you noticed this, but his character art throughout the whole game.
I can't say. I can't honestly say. Like, it's been like 3 months.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So all of his portrait art in his like every time he talked, his eyes didn't have the little white glowy thing in it, and it was supposed to be that he was like operating soulless. He had no emotions. Blah blah blah.
He was a robot.
He's acting like a robot. Yeah. I feel so bad for making him a robot face the first chapter.
That was so
anyway,
good.
Yeah, I'm so sad that was a robot voice. But anyway, it was hilarious because I had no idea. And so that is a very anime trope that's how they make it look like you have no soul or you're like you're broken or whatever, right? And so the little white glistening thing goes back when he finally lets himself feel the pain of losing his sister, lets himself feel like all the misery he's gone through, the pain of taking his like that first life or whatever, and then still having his sister have to protect him and like dying in the process, and like Love disappearing, and then like him going with Love and all that sort of stuff, and like all these things that he's done, and like he just kind of breaks down over everything and he's crying, but the life is back in his eyes and you could see it in his portrait work. So like, and then Estelle brings up like, hey, our first kiss, you kind of poisoned and drugged me. Can we like redo that? And he was just like, okay. So they redo that, and then from there on, they're inseparable again. And I think that's just really.
It's still a weird dynamic.
It's still a weird dynamic, and I will say,
like, it's weird. It's weird.
I still find it really weird, and I know a lot of our community kind of goes against me on this one, but because they keep using the sister vocabulary between the two of them, and like him calling Cassius still his dad, and like stuff like that, just made it really awkward. That I wish in first chapter around the midpoint when she starts to figure out she has feelings for him, they drop that. That whole thing.
I wouldn't necessarily say the him calling Cassius dad thing really bothered me, because like hypothetically speaking, if they got married, like that would make sense, right? However,
so, yeah.
the thing that really bothers me is the brother sister dynamic that they got going on. That is the part that is really weird to me, because they still end up keeping that sort of
That's
dynamic through the entire game, basically.
They do act like siblings in the first game, and they keep it going even after they've admitted their feelings for each other. And she helps pull him out of his final bit of misery where he was going to cast her out and never see her again, because he was probably going to go and like die trying to stop the organization kind of thing. So like she stops him from that one final thing, because that time it was definitely going to be a mistake, and pull him back a little bit. But yeah, they still keep the same sibling sort of dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why the Cassius, keep calling him dad, kind of bugged me, because the dynamic was still the same, but they're supposed to be like loving each other. Yeah, I get it's an anime thing, and I get it, but like I don't. Anyway, so after they kind of get back and reunited, chapter 7 starts out slow. And I think it's because it's that little bit of intermediate before shit's gonna hit the fan, and you're gonna go through the end sequence of things. So chapter 7, it's either chapter 7 or chapter 8. I think it's chapter 7.
Chapter 7 is the one with the towers. You're going around to the towers, stopping, like trying to stop them from like doing whatever they're doing at the towers. So that one I think was kind of like, chapter 8 was the one where you did a lot of backtracking.
Oh, yes. Okay. It's chapter 8 then. So chapter 7, I think was okay, because you're right. You're going around to all the towers, and you're facing off against you're seeing the Ouroboros members again, and you're getting more story with them. You're getting more story with the Walter and the Zin dynamic. You're getting more story because they force you to put Zin in your party for Walter. They force you to put Shara in the party for Luciola. They force you to put oh no, they don't. Not with Blue Blog. Blue Blog, you could have picked anybody. Yeah. So they forced you because they knew you were gonna have a dynamic between them. So you got more story about them, and you found out that like Walter killed Kalika's dad in like a duel kind of thing where they faced off against each other, and it's because the dad sensed all this darkness in Walter's heart and was trying to like change his perspective, and then ended up losing that fight and dying or whatever. So you get that kind of depth. And then you get with Luciola, I didn't like this reason, and it made me actually not like the character, and that she ended up killing the leader because he was going to disband and she didn't want to leave. So she ends up like pushing him off a cliff, but then ends up leaving anyway. And I'm just kind of like, you are just an awful person. And Shara kind of calls her out, being like, that's the reason you killed, like that. Like, we thought he disappeared, but you literally killed him. And that's the reason? Like,
yeah, that was...
It almost felt like, it was just like, what? Anyway.
And it almost felt a little forced, honestly.
It did feel a little bit forced, and it felt less, I don't know, pull me in. After all the character development we had of Shara, it didn't really give me a whole lot. So that's like fair. Luciola was just kind of there. So she wasn't really a character I really particularly cared about at that point. And then Ren, you get to see Ren again, and Estelle is trying to reach out to Ren, and Ren's just kind of like, no, this is what I am. And so you get more of that. And you're kind of going around dealing with all those towers and stuff like that. And then suddenly they activate something where all your quartz can no longer work. And then that's how chapter 8 starts.
That sucked.
It definitely sucked. You couldn't use your arts abilities. So you couldn't use any of your magic or anything. And you also had to do a lot of backtracking because none of the mechanical stuff worked. So you had to run everywhere.
There is like a path that I guess you're supposed to go from city to city that makes it fluid. I don't remember.
I don't think I took that path. I feel like I kind of went on
You're supposed to end in their hometown, I think.
Oh, okay. So
So I
yeah,
think
that
you're
didn't
supposed to
happen for me.
start in like this in terms of where you were in the first chapter, the first game. It's like you're supposed to start in the second area and then go all the way through. Um, but no, I agree. It was painful. One of the things that was nice was that you did at least have the devices that they were using to turn the phones back on. So like you
Yeah.
could equip those until you
You
got to the area that you needed to be at. Then you had to
and then you
unequip
had
one.
you'd have to give them all up as you
Yeah,
go along. So you had to keep picking on who's mad. And luckily, because I had Joshua and Agate, they're more my physical damage dealers. I took them off them right away.
same.
But you didn't have Chloe at this point because she was off doing her own thing. So you didn't have Chloe for pretty well this whole chapter, which she's my main healer. So I had Estelle,
Tita.
Joshua, Agate, and Tita. And I made the mistake of keeping Tita's on and taking Estelle's off,
Oh,
and
I
then
did the
having a
opposite.
really hard time against one of the side bosses. Because chapter 8 is also like there's a lot of side quests you could do in
Oh, I did
between.
none of the side quests. By the time I got to chapter 8, I realized like I wasn't getting the bonus into going into 3. So I was like, I'm not doing the side quests in chapter 8. Screw
And that's
this.
fair because like I did a few of them to level up a little bit because I realized some of my characters
Mm.
were a little low level.
Oh, that's right.
Um,
Yeah, you were a little underleveled.
I was a little under leveled, so I took the advantage of like leveling up Tita a little bit. I even switched in Shara to level her up a little bit. Funny enough, I'd never have leveled up Olivier. I ended the game with Olivier at level 54. My party was like 95 when I beat the game. But yeah, so I took a little bit of time to level them up, and doing the monsters also gave me some more money because I really needed the money. So I
Mm-hmm.
did a lot of like the side monsters and stuff like that in each report, and I did some of the side quests there. I didn't do them all, but I did a few of them to level up a few characters and to get some extra money. But oh my goodness, chapter 8 was so slow after everything being so from like chapter 1, after you do the blue block stuff and you start going to the chapter 2, from like
Mm-hmm.
chapter 2 to 7 is like it's all super fast. It's super like go go go, plot this, plot that, this character, that character, and you're go go go. And then they try to slow it down in chapter 8, but rather than slowing it down, they came to a complete like halt.
Pretty
And there's a
much, yeah.
good few hours of gameplay where it's just halt.
Yeah,
And
chapter 8 was
then
definitely painful.
it was very painful. And then halfway through chapter 8, they had the attack on the capital, and then it picks up again, and then it does not slow down again until you're over. So it's like they had a lull, which I get because you just went through like a lot of shit and you got a lot of story or whatever, and I get it. But the problem is it was a little too long. So it was like it was brutal to get through it. And I remember messaging KJ being like, oh my goodness, like I'm struggling to push through chapter 8 right now. And then it picked up and I was fine. And then I got Chloe back and I was happy again.
So how
I
did
took
you
my
feel?
healer out of the entire chapter 8. And I'm like,
How did you feel about chapter 9 or the final chapter?
so the final chapter, okay. Story wise was very like go, go, go. Like it kind of like it was really flowing really well. The final dungeon where you're like, they reveal basically the castle in the sky.
Yep.
Trails in the sky. They reveal that, and then on that castle you can use magic again. So it's like, okay, so like I'm back to not having this weird thing. They let you upgrade your slots. So I think it was either chapter 7 or 8 where they allowed you to start upgrading your slots to level 3. And using level 3 magic, which is
Was
pretty
it 3 or 2?
cool.
Oh no, it was 3. You're right.
It was 3, yeah.
Yeah.
So they gave you really early on, I think it was like chapter 1, they gave you the ability to upgrade to level 2.
Yep.
And then I think it was either chapter 7 or 6, 7, or 8, somewhere around there, where they allowed you to upgrade to level 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final chapter, chapter 9, you started getting level 3 gems.
Yeah.
That you could equip and everything, which I thought was really, really cool. But it was really, really fast paced. And then suddenly they started allowing you to use every character, but then additional. characters that you would be teased that were put in your party or very briefly that you fought against were suddenly you could use. But you're at chapter 9. You already have a structure and a system with characters. And then suddenly they're like, here, use Josette from the Bandits. It's like, okay, I've never even gotten to
I
control
knew that
this
was going to make you
character.
mad. I knew you were going to be like, why the fuck do I get this character?
Well, the maddening thing is, it's like they not only like, here's the character that you've never been able to use ever. Like, you've never been able to control her. She was always like AI controlled. So finally you get this character, but they make you put her in your party.
Yeah.
For the next little tiny sequence of chapter 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an hour, or not even, it's like a half an hour of like a sequence where you're trying to rescue her brothers and you're stuck with her in your party. After having like finally control over having anybody in your party, you are forced again to have a character in there you've never used and who doesn't even have an S-craft like system. Doesn't have
that's
one.
because you're going through to get her S-craft.
You are, but it's just like,
which I thought was cool. I thought that was cool.
So you go through that segment, you rescue her brothers, then she gets her S-craft system because it involves her brothers being on the Bobcat, coming and blowing everything up, which was actually kind of fun. But at that point, I was like, okay, get her out of my party. Like, I just like, I don't have to use her anymore. Good. I'm going to go back to Agate and Chloe. Thank you. Like, yeet that her person out. But then the game doesn't stop there. They're like, oh, but we've teased these other characters. We're going to slide these guys in your party for like...
Now, these characters are actually optional.
Yes, these are optional, which
like,
is
Josette
the
was
way
required.
I wish Josette would have been.
Yeah, Josette was required because it was part of the story. But the other two characters, like you said, they basically say, oh, we're at a point where we should go back and talk to them. And if you go back and talk to them, you're able to add them to the party.
Yeah. Yeah. The game thing. But if you don't go back and talk to them, you miss that opportunity to go and to use them. So the game basically says, oh, go back and talk to Julia Mueller about what's going on. And if you don't actually go back and do that, you don't get them as optional party members. It is something that you can miss. Whereas Josette, because she's part of the story, she automatically gets to be a part of your people that you can select. But at that point, I'm like, I've never used this character in 9 freaking chapters of this game. I'm not putting her in my party. But then that optional. And at first I was like, I was just going to continue on with the story. But I was like, no, I'm actually going to go back and talk to them because I wonder what they'll say. Maybe they'll give me some items.
I thought they were going to give me some. I also thought they were going to give me items.
Yeah, I thought they were going to give me 3 gem slot things. And I was just like, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to give me some cool, like, weapon. Julia's going to pull out this, like, weapon for Chloe. And Mueller's going to, like, pull out this weapon for Agate. Or something like that. Like,
he would have pulled out a weapon for Olivier.
Swords or some shit. And I was like, yes, let's go, because that's my main party. But no, they, like, offer to be a part of your party. And you get to use Julia. And you get to use Mueller. So I used them for a little bit just to grind a little bit of the quartz that I needed to level a few more level 3s up because they very much were like, this is going to be the point of no return. They were very obvious about that, which is very handy for a game like this. So I used them for a little bit. I grinded a little bit and then I yeeted them out of the party because I had a system. I
don't blame you. I did the same thing.
But like, I was like, yeah. And we progress on. So that part I didn't mind because they were optional. It's also something that you could miss. I think Dark mentioned that he didn't get a chance to use them.
Dark did mention to me that he missed it as well, yeah.
Yeah, so it is a very missable thing. And like I almost missed it too because I was like, and then I like, now I'm gonna go back because I thought I was gonna get items. I didn't realize I was getting characters, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, I'm going to let you kick off how you felt the whole ending boss fight sequence.
Yeah, so I actually enjoyed it because it's effectively a boss rush, which you knew it was coming. Like, it was a boss rush of all of the Ouroboros members that you've met outside of Campanella because Campanella doesn't seem to fight. And I thought it was really cool. I think it was also really interesting. I didn't know about this until after the fact, but if you bring certain party members into the fights, there's like certain cutscenes and stuff that you get, and they interact. It's very obvious the way that they interact with the party when you don't bring those party members. Like, for instance, Walter was very disappointed that Zin was not in my party. And I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. Like, that's actually really cool the way that they did that.
They made it very obvious you should have had Zin in your party for his fight, and Shara for Luciolia.
Yep. Then, after all of that, you go into the hardest fight in the game, which is the fight with the white-haired devil. And
hey, you leave my husband
that fight
alone!
is miserable because he makes
honestly
clones.
That fight was really hard. In the grand scheme of things, I think it was pretty tough.
I was not ready for it, so I got destroyed. And funny enough, that fight is optional. So the way it works is if you lose specifically that fight, you can just skip on to the next part of the story. They give you an option to just continue. And I saw that and I was like, fuck that. I'm going to kick his ass. And the second time I beat him.
I didn't get that option because I didn't lose. I didn't know that was an option.
So it's funny because I think Dark did that a little before me. And I DM'd him and I was like, yo, did you do this? And he was like, oh yeah, I lost the first one too. And I saw that and I was like, fuck that. But yeah, then you go into the real final boss fight. And there were a lot of cool different actually I don't think I'll cover.
You're skipping over the main part. Okay, I'm going to talk about this.
The main part?
Yeah, where you beat up Love. Okay, so if you win against Love, him and Joshua end up in like a one-on-one duel.
Polly's just giving away the ending.
But like, okay, but like, there's so much plot with Love there, and like he's
it's like a cutscene. Let's be real. You're just way too attached to this character. Okay, it's like a cutscene.
I did love Love's cutscene. There was a cutscene after you beat that fight, and I really, really enjoyed the dynamic. You're right. I shouldn't spoil it just in case for people, but like, I really like the dynamic or whatever of like Love and Joshua, and like, it was just. Oh, it's a necessary like you gotta see that cutscene for yourself. Like it was very like kind of heartwarming for me. But anyway, yes, continue. Then after that problem happens, you go.
Because I was gonna also leave out the stuff that happens before the final boss. Because I think that there's a lot of important stuff there, but I think we should leave out some of the details. Let people that haven't played that are still watching enjoy that if they do decide to play.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
But yeah, there are some, especially because this episode is very story heavy. So
yes. We did go into a lot more depth of the story than we usually do for these things.
Definitely. And so then you get into the final boss fight, and what I've learned about Trails games is that they love their tiered boss fights. Like when you are getting into a Trails boss fight, expect at least 3 forms. Maybe more. It has been consistent. That is a consistent thing, that there is multiple forms.
I always expect, to be perfectly honest, in JRPGs, I expect multiple forms at this point.
I don't always. It really depends on the game. Like, for me, it really depends on the game. So, yeah, I ran into the most bullshit mechanic in the game, which is a status called Vanish, which in Trails in the Sky SC you cannot get rid of. So the final form of the final boss has an attack that isn't blatantly obvious that vanishes your characters. And when they vanish your characters, they're just gone.
They're gone for good.
Poof. They're gone. Like,
and it's miserable.
It is awful. And so Polly and I had the same party going in. Mm-hmm. He actually vanished Joshua and then Agate. So I basically had my support bot, Estelle, and my healer, Chloe, trying to do damage, and it was miserable. And I still got him down to like 1,000 damage, and then he killed me. Or actually, I think he vanished everybody.
Oh, he did end up vanishing everybody? Yeah, okay.
Or he vanished 3 of them, and then the 4th one he killed.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I think he will not vanish all 4.
I have no idea if he can,
but I don't know. I died before that.
My system was so good too, because again, in Sky 1 and 2, you can basically just grant immunity. Like if you're Earth, so Estelle literally would just sit in the back and be like, everybody's immune to everything. And then
so nice.
I had Chloe healing, and then Agate and Joshua just did a bunch of damage. And if I needed to do AoE damage, I could do AoE damage. If I needed to do just regular damage, I could do regular damage. It was fine. But that fight pissed me off.
Same. And so KJ had the same, like we both had the same thing happen to each other, which is wild. So we had the same team, and I got to that portion of the fight, and I was really late, and I had to stream the next day. So this was like a Monday night, and I had to stream like the Tuesday. And so Tuesday morning too. And so I was like, okay, I could get through this. I could watch the half an hour probably of cutscenes and beat the game and be done with it. Like I was on the final form. I was really pumped. I was like, okay. I didn't notice when he vanished Estelle. I didn't notice she wasn't on the field until I was like, wait, where'd she go? Because like I had her in the back too doing that earth wall move where she made everybody immune. And so like, and I had Agate and Joshua doing the main attacks, and then I had Chloe keeping everybody alive. And suddenly she just disappeared. I was like, what the hell? And I didn't see the mechanic on what he was doing that made her disappear. I didn't like fully process it.
I missed it. I saw what happened, but I didn't realize what move it was. That was my problem.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was like this thing on the like. I didn't see the like circle on the ground. I didn't see anything of the move. Like I just didn't see it. So I was like, okay, she's gone. Okay, that's okay. I still have my healer. I have my 2 damage dealers. I mean, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world because she wasn't coming back, and I kept expecting her to come back. I was like looking for a way to like bring her back, and there's nothing. And I was like, okay, so I'm just doomed. I'm just down to 3 characters. And then I had like Joshua, Agate like beating him down. And then I saw that he was targeting Chloe, but I thought it was like a regular attack. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll just keep bashing him or whatever. He can't do he couldn't do a 1-hit kill on any of my characters. So they were too high level. So I was like, okay, they have enough health. And she was full health. I was like, okay, she'll just heal next turn. And then suddenly she disappeared. And I was like, wait, is this what happened to Estelle? So I lost my support character and I lost my healer.
Oh, that's a rough spot. That might be...
I only had my damage dealers left, and I was like, well, Joshua's a healer now, because I was like...
See, I had
like,
nothing. I had healing on everybody but Agate. So I was able, like, if that had ever happened to... If I was in that situation, I think I would have been fine. The fact that I couldn't really deal damage sucked.
Yeah, I think not dealing damage would have been really brutal, because... the boss is really strong against magic attacks, and technically only Chloe has the strength of a magic attack that was doing damage, but she was also the main healer. So it's like you never wanted to use up her healing to do magic damage. You wanted her healing all the time. So I was just like, So when I was down to Agate and Joshua could still heal, and he was fast. So I was like, okay, this is savable. And I got him down to like maybe like 10,000 HP, and he did it again to Agate, and I didn't realize the mechanics, and I'm not going to reveal how you dodge this mechanic because I think it'd be more funny to watch people go through it. I don't want to reveal it.
Wow.
But like because I mean I want like people to experience. It's no fun when you like reveal that sort of thing, right? And I'm glad nobody told me, because it's like, even though I was really mad at it. So Agate disappeared too, so I just had Joshua. Mm-hmm. And so Joshua had to heal every turn because the boss would attack and do at least a little bit more than half my health. So then I'd have to heal, and then the boss would attack. And we kind of kept going back and forth until Joshua built up his S break attack, his like CPU big attack. And I was like, okay, and this is really bad. I should have waited till it was at 200%, because if I would have waited till he's 200%, I would have won, because it would have done enough damage to wipe him out.
Patience.
But I was too eager to use it and beat this boss because he was so close to death. He was so close. He had like maybe, I think by that point, just under 10,000 HP left. He was so close. I was like, I can feel it. And I got Joshua to do his big attack, and it dropped him down to like 578 HP. And then he got 2 attacks in a row and killed me because, like I said, he did damage a little bit more than half my health. And he got that twice in a row.
What have we learned?
Patience. Patience is a virtue. I was so mad because I was trying so hard to beat the game so I could come on stream the next morning and say I beat it. And then when I realized I would have to restart that, because that fight's long because the boss has so much HP. So the fight is a long grind. I could restart at that form, but it was still a long grind. And I was looking at maybe midnight, 12:30, 1 a.m. by the time beating it. And I was like, I'm going to be exhausted for stream. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to beat it Tuesday night after stream. I was so mad. I went to bed very grumpy because I was this close. And I was mad because it meant I had to restart the gauntlet again. I had to do the other forms again. I couldn't just retry at that form because I had left it too late in the evening, or it took me too long in the evening. I didn't leave it too late. I had been playing pretty well all day, but I was too late in the evening for that. So I had to restart at the whole gauntlet thing again of like the whole different forms. And then I realized the mechanic of the end boss, and I definitely beat him. I didn't even struggle.
Yeah, the second time I faced him, I didn't struggle either. As long as it's weird. These bosses have a lot of forms, but like if you're paying attention and can like see what they're doing, you generally and you have good rock math, you generally can kind of just reason your way out of the situation. That's been my experience with these games so far.
Yeah, and honestly, while the mechanic of the end boss or whatever is like BS and like I got nuked by it honestly, like, I get it. They had to do something. They had to do something a little bit more unique because the game was fairly, like, as long as you were well leveled and you kind of sort of fumbled through rock math, you were fine. You were gonna get through the game. The exception being the Love fight was actually harder.
Yeah,
I actually found the Love fight harder than the end boss when I realized the mechanics. When I realized the mechanics of the end boss, that I was like, okay. And the funny thing is I beat Love first try. I didn't get a game over with him, but man, did I get close many times, and it was a struggle. Like, that man took no mercy on me.
Because he's crazy.
You know, he's had some things happen. He's not crazy.
He's crazy.
He's not crazy. Yeah. And then, so then we saw the ending of the game. Again, I'm going to be very vague for those who want to watch it.
Some cool shit happens. And by some cool shit, I mean Kevin's a badass. That's all.
Oh yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll just kind of be very vague of the thing. Yeah, so you beat the game, and my whole time, like when I beat it, I was like, "What the heck about this Capabella?" We kept getting Capanella popping up. What the heck? Like, there was nothing of him. I was like, I kept expecting him to like just come in at the thing, and no.
I mean, he says he's Agent Zero the Fool, so I figured that he was going to be
then I
more
realized,
of like
because it was revealed that he was literally just there not to interfere with anything. He was literally there to like...
He's like the embodiment of a note-taking emote.
He really is! He's like... Or a sippy. he's the sip emote being like Wiseman's like, oh, I'm gonna like rule the world, and he's just like sippy. It's like, sure, Wiseman, sure. So like he's literally that. And then you get more lore on Kevin. And now I'm just like, I want to know more about Kevin because it reveals a little bit more of him, who he is. And I very much doubted what he said at the beginning of the game. And now I was glad because the end of the game proved what I doubted at the beginning of the game.
I'm just going to keep sipping.
And Kevin no emote. Oh my god.
Everybody that knows, everybody that's in the know is sipping right now, Polly. I'm sorry that you're not sipping.
I know, because I haven't played Sky 3, but yeah, so I
we're actually chugging the drink. We're not even sipping it. We're chugging the drink.
Yeah, and so you got these pieces about Kevin. I was like, I want to know more about Kevin. That's great. And it kind of like it's so the second chapter, whatever, kind of wraps up, but it doesn't wrap up at the same time. There's a lot of loose ends that have not been covered. There's a lot of things still waiting to be figured out, and you kind of go into the end of the game where it's just like, there's still more here, and my questions about particular characters have not been answered yet.
Ooh, so that's just like interesting. What questions for what characters? I'm curious.
So for one thing, I want to know like the leader of Ouroboros, like what the heck that person is. Where is he? This grandmaster they spoke of that you never see. Capanella, I want to know more about him too, because he was just there to be an observer, but like there's got to be more to him. And then with Kevin, I want to know more about Kevin, and like you get some lore dumped on you with Kevin at the end of that game. Absolutely, which made him way more. Okay,
Polly's trying to skip badass. Like 6 games and figure out what the hell's going on with everybody.
Yeah, but like I want to know. I want to know. So yeah, so like those are the things, and then like I'm wondering if we'll ever run into Ren again. Honestly, I think that was pretty well all the big portions.
Okay.
And like ultimately, what was the end game of this? Because like Capanella was like at the end, he was just like, "Oh, I was just here to observe. Whatever happens, happens. I'm not supposed to interfere. I was just supposed to like take notes." It's like, but what was the end game of this though? Like what were you trying to like? Anyway, so there's just a lot.
He was observing what was happening. That's all.
Yeah, but there's just a lot that's like they reawakened the city and then the city went down again, and like it's just like what was like where they were like wondering how the fusion would go and everything. I don't know. There's just so many things where I'm just like, so. And actually I was so happy because I ended up beating second chapter, I believe, that Tuesday night. Like I ended stream, had supper, and then I beat it because I was like, beating this now, and left me off just being like, I kind of want to play 3. But I had already started Suikoden. I literally had day 1 of Suikoden that same day, and I was like, I want to play 3. So yeah, we're gonna have to play 3 sooner rather than later. But this series definitely does a good job of being like, and now you have to play the next one.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, the questions that you're asking are questions I have, and I'm 2 games ahead. Not all of them, but some of them.
Okay. So it's kind of like you're in it for the long haul.
Oh yeah, you might get what I'll say is you might get pieces of answers that you're looking for, but like I'm still
not
asking,
the overall thing. Okay.
Yeah, I'm still asking some of those questions.
Fair enough.
She said Sky Third is I've already finished that game.
Yeah, he's already finished it. I might actually make Sky Third a stream game myself.
Makes sense.
Especially because like KJ also said that he wanted to see me go through 3, but also just as a refresher or something like that.
The emotional damage is gonna be strong with this one. I can't wait. It's gonna be so good.
You're already ruining my life with Suikoden 2, and now you want to ruin my life with Sky 3? That's okay. Just break me and ever.
Late game Sky 3 is gonna have Polly screaming, probably through a megaphone.
And this is why you want to actually see the stream, because like Catbox Mune isn't enough for you.
Nope.
Because you've had Catbox Mune in your DMs for like this entire duration of this game. It's not enough for you. You need to see the actual physical screaming. All right.
It's gonna be so good. But yeah, what were your kind of closing thoughts? What did you think of the game?
I thought it was really well done. Honestly, I like that they didn't try to change too much from the first game. They just kind of kept a lot of the mechanics the same, so you could kind of go into the second game, especially because the plot line flowed so quickly in the second game, and you got majority of the plot line in the second game as opposed to the first. I'm glad they didn't hold you back with a bunch of new mechanics.
Same.
And tried to change things and try to like change stuff that worked really well. So you already figured out the mechanics and the world building and stuff in the first game. Now you could just jump into the second one and go headfirst into that plot and not worry about mechanics or things like that for the most part. I still figured out rock math halfway through second chapter, but I was able to get through it up until like suddenly it dawned on me, but I could have probably still started to figure it out. I just wouldn't have had certain spells, so it would have been a little bit trickier.
I think you would have struggled a little bit more endgame had you not.
Yes, I would have struggled more endgame, I think. Not understanding the manual portion of the game. But yeah, overall, I definitely was more into this game than the first one. I think partly is because of how I played it. I was playing it like 4 to 5 to 6 hours or about, I would say between 3 to 5 hours at a time. Sometimes I would stream it. I did throw it as an occasional stream game too to help myself get through it. And my streams were like 6, 7 hours, 8 hours long. So again, 4 to 6 hour play sessions at a time. And so like I feel like I was way more drawn into it. I was also like there was a lot of character development. So I would really honestly give this a pretty high ranking. I think the gameplay mechanics are great. I think the music is great. The little bit of voice acting is a tease. I wish there was a little bit more, but I understand.
I don't even remember there being voice acting because like
it's such a minor thing, but like for me, because I knew the voice actors, it was a little bit more engaging for me after battle. But the music was really good. Sound effects were really good. Art style was great. Mechanics was great. When I finally figured out rock math, I felt so powerful because I was like, I can add everything together.
It's wild what reading the manual. And like,
which I normally don't do.
Reading the
especially for first playthroughs, because I'm worried it's going to spoil me.
But it's an in-game manual. It's not going to show you.
No, I know, and that's where I should have known the difference.
Game mechanics.
If I would have been more like, my brain would have been more like, okay, this is like the digital version. They're not going to do that to you on the digital version. But I kept like avoiding it, just being like, nah, I'm not going to read it because I don't want like spoilies, And I'm like, this is just like when a physical manual, it's way less. Because the physical manual, they're trying to pull you into the game more. Because a lot of the times people like going to like a rental store or something like that would look at that manual and like read it and see if they were even interested in getting the game or whatever. So it's like, I get why manuals, like the physical copies were
I will say the manual for Sky 2, the physical manual talks about a lot. It talks about Ouroboros, it talks about the Black Orbment, it talks about it
spoils a lot.
All the playable characters, all of the Ouroboros members that you meet.
Oh, so it does spoil a shit ton. All right.
And that's like the first 12 pages.
Yeah, okay. So like that's where my mentality went, but I should have known the digital one probably wouldn't have had any of that.
However, I will say all of that would have meant nothing because it's all in Japanese. So
that's fair, yeah. Because
other than some of the names, everything else is in Japanese. No, I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think it was a very good game. I think my problem with it is mostly in that it's not a standalone game, so it's hard to like.
Yeah, this one's really hard to rank. I think I can rank first chapter and second chapter together, but I don't know if I could have them either one of them standalone. Because first chapter you're missing a lot of the plot and character development. Like you
Mhm.
get it at the very end, but it's more world building and mechanical stuff.
I think
Whereas
first
this,
chapter stands alone better than second chapter does, because first chapter you you do complete the story, and then it's just that second or the last 15 minutes of cutscenes open up a bigger world.
okay, I think it could be a standalone game. I would
Mhm.
say I think second chapter is way more interesting. I guess that's more
Agreed.
what I was going.
Agreed. But I think like first chapter, you could realistically you could play first chapter, and if you don't care about the rest of like, if you don't care about that cutscene with Joshua, you could just be like, all right, cool, I got my plays out of it. Like we finished
This
that
is
thing.
true. Yeah, you could leave
Like the
off of
plot,
first
the
chapter and
main
not.
plot thread that they give you is for the most part solved. But
Okay,
then in
yeah.
second chapter, it's like it picks up from first chapter, and there's still a ton of open questions at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And I think it becomes really hard in second chapter to then rank it on its own
Mm-hmm.
because it relied a lot on first chapter to set the stage as well. Because it's like, it's hard because, like, I don't know how to rank this one because it's like, I definitely enjoyed this one more than the first one. But again, I think it was also largely how I played. And because a lot of the story happens in the second one as opposed to the first one. But it's hard to rank like on its own. Like, but it is a sequel. It is a very direct sequel and it has to build off of the second one. But it's kind of like the difference between Golden Sun 1 and 2. So Golden Sun 1, you could very realistically like, okay, I actually find Trails of the Sky first chapter less likely for you just to end and walk away than Golden Sun 1. And I think the problem is because we got a lot more character development of the characters in Golden Sun 1
That's true.
that at Golden Sun 2, it's like a whole new party going on that you're dynamicing with. So it's like it's very easy to whereas it's Trails of the Sky second chapter, a lot of the character development is in second chapter.
Yeah.
As opposed to the first chapter. You get a few like for example, Shara. Like I would have left off hating Shara if I never played the second game because I didn't get any story with her.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it feels with so I think Golden Sun 1 and 2 are a very good comparison with these games, but I think I agree that like Trails in the Sky first and second chapter, you kind of have to you need those games like how do I say this? Yeah, you're not meant to play them out of order. No, I agree with that.
no.
But like it's hard to for me personally, it's hard to judge a game when it's dependent on another game. Because
Yes. Yeah.
part of it is like that takes away from if it's dependent on another game, that takes away from the story. Because it's not a standalone. So like I look at something like Golden Sun 1 and Golden Sun 2, yes. In the grand scheme of things, Golden Sun 1 and Golden Sun 2 are you do need the info from Golden Sun 1 to play Golden Sun 2. However, Golden Sun 1 you could stop. And I feel the same way about Trails in the Sky 1 is that with either of them you could stop at 1 and you'll have some questions, but like they're not really necessarily they're like a couple of big picture questions.
I don't I think I disagree that you could stop at first chapter. I think because of the way they end first chapter off, not even with the Joshua, like Joshua stuff aside, is that you at the end of first chapter 1, you fight a big robot, but like everything's like left kind of still in the air of being like, and then you get revealed about the professor like pulling all the strings and stuff, and that there's a bigger thing and whatever. I guess it's well with Golden Sun 1, you kind of had that too.
Yeah, I think
It's tough. It's so tough
the
because I was
plot
like,
threads that they're like really pushing on in the first game, they end. It's the second game, like it's the start of it's the because again, you don't really know. They sprinkle the Ouroboros thing in there at the very end.
that's true.
And it's
Yeah,
like, oh shit.
I see
like,
what you're saying. You're right. It comes down to like, I think I can rate this game if you've played the first one and you play the two of them like together. But you can also very realistically for Golden Sun 1 and Trails of the Sky first chapter just end at the first one and be done with it.
You could. Realistically, nobody's going to do that. But like
nobody's going to do that. No, because you're going to be too invested on like wanting to know about the characters and stuff. And I don't think there's enough character development in one that makes you like okay, I know who these people are and walk away. Like I feel like most people, like if not all people, are gonna do that and be like, I want to know who these characters are. I want to know more. I want to know like what's going on. Like why did Joshua do this thing and yada yada yada. So it's like I feel like you get a lot more of that. And like Golden Sun 2, it's the same thing with me. Like I beat 1 and I was like, it leaves off on a cliffhanger. Like, I want to know more. I want to go through it more. And then when I start off 2, I was finding it a little rough to start 2.
It is.
Unlike Trails of the Sky second chapter, where I feel like it was a perfect fluidity from like the first to the second game. Golden Sun 2, it's like a big, like, you're now a different party. And then it's pretty slow to start picking up with that different party. So I feel like there was more of a drag there for me of Golden Sun 2 as opposed to Trails of the Sky second chapter. So while I loved Golden Sun 1 a lot, I feel like there was like quite a dip into 2 and then it starts to get good and then it picks up about halfway through the second game, which is not a good dip to have when you have things like kind of flow back to back where second chapter, the only dip I felt was in chapter 8. And it was for like an hour or a couple hours. It was like for halfway through that chapter.
I think it started off a little like, even though I found it interesting, it was a little bit of a drag to do all of the like.
Oh, I guess technically, yeah, the prologue stuff and the chapter 1 with the Phantom guy.
Yeah, and that also. But honestly, no, I agree. I think Sky 2, like Sky SC is better than Sky FC in my opinion, but again, I can't help but say you need these games for each other, which is kind of rough, in my opinion. I will say Sky 3 is probably the most standalone of all of them. So, like, if somebody were to play Sky 3 first, I would say that's a bad idea because you don't have the context of what happens in 1 and 2. But there would be... They do a good job of explaining the past stuff as well. So that would be my only thing.
Okay, yeah. So I think maybe like putting first chapter and second chapter together, I do think it's a solid like 8.5, 9 out of 10 game if you're playing both of them together. I don't like obviously you can't play this game. I feel like you strongly can't really do this game without the first one.
Oh,
there's too much world building and there's too much setup in the first one that you really can't go into the second one without playing the first one. Where for you could feel like you could kind of do that in 3, but you'd still be missing context.
Yeah,
but you could still kind of do it. Where first chapter and second chapter flow so closely into each other, even with the mechanics. I think it becomes really difficult to separate them. So I think them as a package would be around that rating, but I don't know if I could rate this game on its own per se because it's like it can't stand on its own.
No, I agree. I totally agree.
So it's like Like I like to give ratings on games like if they could stand on their own. And the same with Golden Sun 1 and 2. My rating of them are combined of you playing both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for the second one. Like the first one I can rate. The second one I can't really do it unless you've played the first one. And I do think this is like I do think second chapter is like a little bit of an like it's a little bit of a get go from the first one. So like it definitely so like I was around like an 8ish for first chapter. I would say this is more like an 8.5 a 9 kind of thing playing second chapter because it's an improvement. It's kind of like
It is
Octopath
definitely.
Traveler 1 and 2 where I found Octopath Traveler 2 improved on all the things that I liked of Octopath Traveler 1. It's a similar kind of concept. So yeah, I would say now my ranking of both of them together would be like an 8.5, 9 out of 10. And then, but I very much preference you have to play both of them.
Yeah, I'd agree. I agree with everything you said. That was where I was sitting as well.
Okay.
They're good games. They are very good games. I think they're worth a
good,
play.
very interesting characters, very interesting like behind the scenes sort of puppetry going on that you want to know more of.
I guess game wise, I'm now almost halfway through the series, and like, I mean, I know time wise, I'm not, but yeah, it's definitely worth it. Definitely worth a play if you enjoy world building, you enjoy RPGs that might give you a little bit more of a slow burn, and then kind of really start to pick up and just be packed with action and packed with like everything, every kind of drama you can think of, then this is definitely a good series for you.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say if you're looking for a JRPG that's unique too, because the battle system or like the whole like rock court system is unique.
Mm-hmm.
It is unique to the game.
I've not seen anything like that.
I've not seen anything like that in a game before. The art style, I mean, it's similar to some things, but not quite. It's very kind of unique. Music is great. Like I feel like if you're looking for a JRPG experience that isn't just the typical Final Fantasy, I think this is a great series to dive into, especially these two games together, because it just opens up that there's just so many different ways to do the JRPG experience. And I feel like while there's good JRPG games out there, or RPG games out there, they don't always add anything super, super new to the whole like pot of RPGs that there is. And so like while they're good games, I'm like, okay, you know, that was fun, but like it's not like bringing anything super new. I feel like Trails in the Sky brought something really, really new. Also, just having the very rarity of having a very strong woman protagonist that can stand on her own. And at first, in the first chapter, you're kind of like, well, she does, but she kind of has Joshua. But then in the second chapter, you realize she doesn't have Joshua anymore. She really does have to stand on her own. And you can see that she can. And I think that's really important because a lot of the times with the women protagonists or like the co-protagonist sort of thing that they have at JRPGs is the woman is very dependent on the male character a lot. And so that trope happens a lot in anime, that trope happens a lot in video games. So it's really nice and refreshing to have a main character that's a woman character, a female character, and that she's like she could stand on her own, she can like handle things on her own, and while she needs people to kind of help her hand, she doesn't like necessarily like need them to carry her through anything. She's strong, she's very like spirited kind of character, and it was just also kind of nice to see a main character kind of like me. So that's also an extra bonus. So that was more personal to me, but it's nice because you don't get that a whole lot in RPGs, right? Especially like older ones, right? I would consider Trails in the Sky still retro, in my opinion.
2004, I think. Sky One was. So, yeah, I'd give you that.
Yeah, retro-ish. But like you didn't get it a whole lot, and that wasn't a annex or title or whatever. like a big.
We could talk about that for hours. Let's not even go there.
Yeah, let's not go there. But like, so yeah, so like I think this is a great game to try if you're looking for an RPG experience that's different. I also think this is great if you're looking for like a main character who's kind of different, and then it's just like the mechanics are great and everything. Like I highly recommend people who like RPGs to definitely try this. At least try these two games back to get back and then see how you feel from there. Because it seems like Trails of the Sky series, Zero and Azure all kind of have the similar mechanic and art style ish. I mean, they might change it. I think I heard that Sky
Ish.
3 changes it, but like the art kind of looks similar and stuff like that. And then Cold Steel changes things and looks different for their 4 games, and then Reverie looks different. It looks like, so it looks like
I think
those are like
it's
the
more
sections.
so that it's like it's Sky 1, 2, and 3 because those are done by Xseed, and then you have the Crossbell games which are done by NIS, so those are different. Then Cold Steel 1 and 2 are done by Xseed, so you have them, and they're on the PS3 instead of the PSP, PS3/PS4 instead of the PSP. So those are different. And then you have Cold Steel 3 and 4, which are done by NIS, and those and Reverie. So all 3 of those are different. So it's really like the localization
Okay.
and who's sort of publishing it and everything.
Oh, so it's more based on if it's Xseed or NIS publishing
Exactly.
it, more separating it than
Yep.
anything else. Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
It's just
But
that
yeah.
they did the Crossbell duology later on. Like they brought it, they translated it later on. So really, Xseed. That's why it's like randomly you have the 2 games that Xseed didn't do in between the ones that they did, because those were done much later.
Oh, okay. So it's a good time to be a Trails fan right now because things are
Yes.
being put in better order,
Yep.
especially with the release of Azure a few years ago. Yeah, it was a few years ago, right?
Earlier this year.
Oh no, earlier this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like bringing that over gave you the complete of the Crossbell sort of thing that happens before Cold Steel. So it's
Mhm.
actually really good to be into the Trail series now.
Yeah.
Because you have the option of going back to those. And like even with Sky 1, 2, and 3, I mean Sky being brought over here thanks to Steam. I mean, that was long after the first 2 games came out, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, the
so-
first one came out in the US on the PSP.
Yeah.
It was the second and third that didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so second and third. Okay, that would have been a bit of brutal to be a Trails of the Sky and then be like, I can't play the second and third one.
Yep.
That would have been so brutal back then. So like, it is a really good time to be a Trails fan now and to start now. And Trails of the Sky is really easily accessible now. It's on Steam. That's where we both played it.
Mhm.
They're fair. They go on sale all the time. But they're fairly
on sale
they're fairly
now.
Oh, they might be on sale right now. Yeah. And they're
think they're
fairly
on sale
inexpensive
now.
anyway. They're not that expensive to get a hold of them and grab all 3 and see what like you think. But definitely worth a play for those JRPG fans who are looking for something different and, just a very intriguing game. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we can wrap up at least this portion, and then we can start talking about like what's next. So yeah, I think. Well, I'll.
Oh no, we want to say what our next game is before we like conclude for our listeners.
I might have clicked the button. I'm sorry.
KJ,
I dropped the ball. I was like, wait, we're good.
No, we always announce the next one. Okay.
I totally was not thinking and was like, oh, we're good. My bad. That's on me.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, for those of you might not have heard, we played these 2 games back to back. The next one that we're doing off stream is Chained Echoes. This is actually really cool because it was made by one person and a composer.
Yeah, that's kind of wild to think about.
It's wild to think about that there's an RPG game out there made by one person entirely, and a composer. And like it made it into our wanting to play because we both kept seeing the art of it and a little bit of the gameplay. And we're like, wow, this game looks really, really cool. And it looked really, really good, right up our alley for like loving the, retro pixel style, but also doing it in a way that was like, it's really detailed. Like it's really detailed pixel art, but like unique enough that it's its own style. of pixel art, which
Mhm.
is kind of intriguing. Again, by like one person. I want to keep emphasizing that because it's an indie game. So we're both really excited to try this one out. And that's our next one that we're going to do. And then we're going to review it sometime in September.
Mhm.
We'll pick a day when we've both have beaten it sometime in September. So that is our next podcast game that we're going to do. So you could pick this game up on, I believe it's Switch, PS4, and Steam.
Mhm.
You could pick it up on any of those 3 platforms, I believe.
I think it might be on Game Pass too.
Oh, it might be on Game Pass too, so maybe check it out there. But it's a game
It's
that's like,
definitely on
I
Game Pass,
believe
yeah.
under $40 Canadian or something like that to grab. And if you want to join us in playing that, we're going to be playing that from like I've already started, but we're already starting to play it. So, but we'll be playing it for September and then picking a date if you want to play that with us and chat about it. I'm really excited because this is an indie game. I think it's our first indie game that we're doing.
Yeah.
Indie RPG game.
I had to roll through the games in my head, but yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the first indie game we're doing. It's yeah, which I'm really really excited about. And yeah, we can't wait to share our thoughts with you then. So it'll be sometime in September again on this YouTube channel. I think I am going to take the plunge in hosting it so that poor KJ doesn't have to do it all, but he's definitely gonna have to walk me through how to stream
It's
on
not
YouTube.
too bad. You'll be fine.
'Cause,
You got this.
Because it's a very different experience for me, but I'm like super excited about it. So yeah, first indie game we're working on. supporting the indie developers. You gotta love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think we can wrap this up then.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you everybody for hanging out with us, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. We can't rate out, so
yeah. That's the one thing that's weird about YouTube streams is that we just
Yep.
literally don't rate out. We just end. It's such a weird thing to think about as a Twitch streamer coming to YouTube.
Yep.
That
Well, yeah.
you don't
So
rate out.
we'll be in the Discord if y'all want to talk about Chained Echoes.
Yeah,
and we'll
KJ
catch
has
y'all-
a channel in his Discord with Chained Echoes channel already that we've already started to talk into a little bit. Every time we have a podcast game or whatever, he makes another one in his Discord, so definitely join those. Either both of ours, but his has the one that actually has where the channel where we're going to be talking into for Chained Echoes or whatever. And then yeah, after we get kind of pushed through a Chained Echoes, we'll reveal what the next one is. It depends on timing for both of us. We're both busy for the same like week in October, so it'll be interesting what the next one will be depending on the length of it.
I don't even remember what the next game was supposed to be, so
exactly. So like at that point, it'll just depend on how things are going and where we're sitting at stuff. But for now, we're gonna announce the one game ahead, and yeah,
we'll make it work.
Chained Echoes. So make it easier, and then we'll see, partway through that what we're thinking about. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye everyone.
Oh God, my pitch of my voice went up so high. Yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. We appreciate you and all the comments. Much love.